He's big on stretch.
You bet. That's what cars are all about, speed.
Yeah, they do have squat racks, free weights, med balls and stuff. But there's 3 guys who are looking. They're incredible.
Yeah, I put it in the Penn State training room, and the icers use it. Women's basketball uses it. Men's anyhow, that circuit is in my garage collecting dust because I don't use it anymore. If there's, I mean, I don't care if you take it to the high school, if, the junior high, I don't care who uses it, and I just want to give it away. But it isn't the most modern stuff, but it works.
Let me look into that. Thank you. That's a generous offer that I don't think we can afford to pass up. That's awesome.
Now you have to have an air compressor that generates.
Oh, okay,
If you not see that, the one that your son's working on, it's all.
I got 6. You ready, buddy?
Yes.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Bellefonte Borough work session. Our council, there'll be no decisions made during the work session. There'll just be discussions between council and presenters. It's easy for me to say. We usually have a trivia question at this time, and Mr. Bernier is running a little bit late, so we'll have to skip that. And we're going to move right in to a special presentation. I'll introduce Mayor Buddy Will. Oh, yeah. Buddy Will.
Senator Jay Corman, would you please come up and join us?
My retired clothes. And my parent, basketball parent clothing.
We have a proclamation to read for Jake tonight. Before I read the proclamation, from all of us in the Bellefonte Borough, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for everything that you've done for the community. Since I first met Jake on the Little League field, and I think he was doing something like this, waving the kids around the bases, right? It was evident that Jake was family and community first. And the more I got to know Jake, the more I appreciate what he has done, not only for everybody in his district, but especially for the borough of Bellefonte. So, Jake, for that, we honor you with this proclamation, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
So we have a proclamation, whereas Jake Doyle Corman III is retiring after 23 years of representing the 34th Senate District in Pennsylvania. And whereas Jake Corman obtained an associate degree in communication from the Pennsylvania College of Technology and a Bachelor of Arts degree from the Pennsylvania State University. And whereas Jake Corman represented the 34th State District, which included all of Center, Mifflin, and Juniata counties and portions of Huntington County from January 7th, 1999 to November 30th, 2022. And now, therefore, I, Buddy Johnson, Mayor of the Borough of Bellefonte, do hereby recognize and congratulate Jake Corman on his retirement and thank him for his long-standing commitment to serving our community. In witness whereof, I do hereby set my hand and corporate seal of the Borough of Bellefonte this 19th day of December 2022. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sure, my pleasure.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you for all you've done.
Can I say something real quick?
Please do, please do.
First of all, thank you very much. You know, I've lived in Bellefonte all my life, either Bellefonte or Benner Township. And grew up on Lynn Street and Allegheny Street. And in those days, it was the Dave Woodrings of the world, the Stan Goldmans, the Leonard Levines, Glenn Dershams that ran the town and did all the things to keep the town in a good spot, and many, many more. And it was just a great community to grow up in. So we're thrilled to be able to raise our children here. We have 3 children. 2 of them are playing in a basketball game in a few minutes. That's where I'm heading next, so thank you for the borough to accommodate my schedule. We went through a lot of challenges over the last 20 years. I mean, we were at one point here in Bellefonte where we had a couple burned out buildings, vacant lots, and it was sort of depressing. And one thing I always say about the borough, Ralph and Don, what great people to work with. Made it easy when we tried to challenge. I had a great partner in Kerry Benninghoff to get things done, and we got those buildings fixed up. Hopefully, we got the real nice wall over here, and hopefully someday we'll get something built there. But there's been a lot of challenges. But I've always been a big believer, and even though I live in a township, the boroughs are our community. That's where we're from Bellefonte. I'm not from Benner Township. I'm from Bellefonte, and they have to be vibrant. And even though it's gone through a lot of changes, where retail is, used to be everything down here, and it's kind of gone away, you still have to figure out ways to make them vibrant because they're the centerpiece of the community. And so that was something in my career I always focused on, and certainly being from Bellefonte, I was happy to be part of helping Bellefonte meet its challenges and adding to the quality of life issues that make this such a great place to live and raise a family as I have. So this means a great deal to me. Thank you very much. To be recognized by your hometown is pretty special. So thank you all very much. I'll take my leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, we're going to move into the updates on the band shell. Who are you putting first and foremost?
Do you have a controller here?
You just have to let me know, Tom, when you want me to.
Let's go back to the original concept. And by the way, that's perfect. It's perfect. I'm Tom Bathgate. I also grew up in Bellefonte, but I now live on a hilltop outside of Howard. And Michael Leakey is our architect from HLA. My co-chairman, Rick, is a retired, supposedly, psychologist. And then Kay Custom Borders from State College. She grew up in Bellefonte, and she's a whiz at fundraising. And Tom Hesketh is contributed a significant amount to our ploy. 25 years he ran the Eisenhower Auditorium, so he's been very helpful in pulling things together. What you see up there is their original concept, which we presented to Borough Council June 21st, 2020. So we've been at this for a while. And that particular concept was 5,918 square feet. It's going to be about just a little over $2 million to build. And yes, the event space in the back side here is where the subway building is. And we were removing that. Since that time, we got feedback from some of the fundraising activities we started, and I don't want to criticize. It was a sketch that was done free of charge for our effort. So I'm not going to criticize it, but it didn't. It was supposedly not enough wow. This is an area where you enter Bellefonte on Route 144, Route 150, and wanted something that jumped out, almost landmarkish. And so with that, we hired Mike Leakey and his staff. And Mike, you want to come up and sort of present that, if you would?
Sure.
Come into the new concept. And while you're presenting that, I'm going to tell them a little bit about it. You completed that in July of 2022 last summer.
Well, this is actually the BE version.
No,
so
no.
This is
Yeah.
correct.
There you go. Well, that's the plan.
This is the latest version that we have. I think the original one we presented to the council was maybe in late August?
Mm-hmm.
If you can
Okay.
speak up a little louder, because people in the back can't hear you.
Can you hear me? I do speak quiet. By the way, I did not grow up in Bellefonte, but it is a great place to have a business, and I appreciate being here, for the record. We presented the original design, I believe it was in August at some point, and don't recall the exact date. It was a bit larger. Since then, because part of our partner was McCross Construction, which is part of the design team. And since then, because of the cost, we value engineered some things down. So right now, it's about 3,500 square feet. This is the base plan. It has 2 single-use restrooms. It's really mainly a stage with a pavilion attached to the back. And if you want to advance the slides a little bit, Don, it looks similar to what you saw originally. It's just a bit smaller. The iconic furnace kind of icon is the basic motif of the design with the pavilion. And it's at this point, we have it as a timber frame sort of structure, but open to the public to use. There's a couple more slides. Go ahead, Tom. Did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I think the furnaces are part of the fundraising scheme, and that we're very proud of the history of the Iron Masters here, many of which were Quakers, and in conjunction with the Reverend Lind of the Presbyterian Church, built the Underground Railroad that came through here, not only north-south, but east-west. And Bellefonte's was really part of our fundraising is there's some very popular black people with a lot of money that are, we're telling them about Bellefonte and the leader that we were in our school systems and our protection of runaway slaves, something that was probably against the law, federal law. But there's a story of in 1863 of a runaway slave that was, the bounty hunters had to be protected by the sheriffs from being lynched. And of course the slaves were freed. And that happened all in the town of Bellefonte. Anyway, this particular band shell at this point is 35% of the size of our original, 35% less. And we got a 40-foot by 50-foot stage, which was really developed by the high school band director, and then confirmed by the Nittany Valley Orchestra, who would love to use it in the fair weather. Performers, restrooms, stage, storage, Mike had shown you, and those were recommended by Tom Hesketh.
Can I jump in for just a second?
Sure.
The view you're looking at is actually from the main street coming into town. That originally, this image had a storefront around it. It's now open. So I just wanted to make sure you were looking at the right image. Could you advance that a little bit? So this would be from the stage side, and there's a couple more close-up shots that we can look at. Sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
No, you're on a roll. Go. There you go. You can see some of the planting areas too. We got the garden club, and they're coming up shortly with their donation. Stormwater retention, and we raised the subway. This concept was approved in a larger size on July 18th to Borough Council. We had a budget, the cost estimate done by McCrossin in August of 2022 on the smaller version, which is 2.5 million. Now included in the 2.5 million is 230,000 of an endowment that will be a sinking fund to pay for repairs, maintenance, and operations for the next 20 years. We started 2 months ago. You'd think that we could get moving, but it took forever to get our brochures. You couldn't sit down and talk with anybody about it. So we got started about 2 months ago in the silent phase, and I'm pleased we're $250 short of $50,000 already cash in the bank, and we're able to pay our architect, which is something I was pretty concerned about. But at the same time, we've actually got more money coming in, and we've got a couple of very large grants that have been, application has been made for us by politicians in our behalf. So any one of which will pay for it all. So construction scheduled to commence October 1st, 2024, if we're still on track with y'all. And then our partners are DBI, Downtown Bellefonte Incorporated, because we wanted to have a 501c3 where if you contribute toward it, it's a tax deduction. And at the same time, they will be the holders of the lease and the owners of we're renting the land from the borough, and we'll have a lease for you in about 2 weeks' time, as soon as we get through the holidays and Randy Beard can get all the details that we've added to it. So we'll be bringing that back for your consumption. And brochures. Yeah, we want to leave you with a brochure. And that's really it, unless you have a number of questions.
Tom, so I guess that your purpose tonight was to come in to give council an update on, where you all are. And the other thing that you were looking for, that we currently don't have any agreement in place between the band shell committee and the borough. And you guys at this point in time to continue this fundraising effort kind of have to have something, in writing. And that's what Rodney Beard's working on for.
The lease.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a long-term lease. It's anywhere from 29 years to 99 years.
And there's something about the
There's tax
29 years that's
implications
magic.
involved. But yes, that's that. There's a copy of what I just told you. If anybody wants it for the record,
Yes, we'll take it.
I'll leave it right here. Any other questions?
If anybody has any questions, I know there's discussion brought up months ago, and we met with the committee and had a meeting, and that's why they're here tonight. So if anybody else had any ideas, but I like the smaller version. I think it fits that area better than the first one.
Yeah, it still takes, in order to get it done, if you want to go to the Water Street side, okay, that whole area is like a meeting area, which would be a revenue generator. A lot of the businesses in the area, including the Big Spring Spirits, the people up at Axeman, they want to use that for meeting space, weddings, things like that, where they could serve under the roof, but it's not enclosed, it's just in the summertime. And you can have weddings that would include the stage if there's not an act going on. Behind there, we have the 2 restrooms for the performers. We have storage for the stage, and those all happen to sit right about where the subway is. One of the things we could do if, for one reason or another, we could stage it and just go with the stage, which doesn't give us any restrooms or anything like that. And it's going to be more expensive to operate, frankly, with the stage equipment. Chairs for the high school band to sit on when they come to perform. So.
I have a question about the additional structures to the right and left of the stage. They look like pergolas.
Yeah, they're little, and for $20,000, you can get the family name on there. One of the things that we noticed just living with it and being down there, we need shade. We need shade for, it would be a nice addition to just the park in general. A lot of people are running and walking around that area, and that'll give them some shade.
Okay, great idea.
And it also helps us with the grade change from the sidewalk to the stage, and that's why the plantings are there also.
Looks good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and the garden club's anxious to give us some money, so that'll work good. And yes, we're in a fundraising mode.
So, Dawn, based on what you're saying, what do we do? How do we move that forward now?
Well, I think what Tom said, we're obviously working on the lease with Pelicans, the snowballs for the subway building, but the timing that they're now talking about, I think, is, workable and everything. So I think what we do is, wait till Rodney provides the lease and we'll look at it and go from there.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, so we're going to switch up here a little bit, Jacob, and have you come up and give us your report on the parking on the Diamond area.
welcome tonight. Jacob, nice to have you here. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so for those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Jacob Wiegand. I'm a PhD candidate at Penn State in the College of Engineering. I'm studying transportation engineering, and over the course of this fall semester, I've been working on a parking study for the downtown T area in Bellefonte, as I was aware that there is a demand for additional on-street parking. And so I've been investigating angle parking patterns for the borough. And so as I've been going through this process, there's been kind of an overarching question. It's just kind of been how, or what are the potential benefits and consequences of converting your existing on-street angle parking to head-in or back-in angle parking. And then just below that, this is just a structure for how I'm going to go about this. There's just a little bit about the exigence of the parking study. Why are we doing this? Just a little bit about the site. This is probably going to be a brief overview for you guys since you're familiar. And then getting into the benefits and consequences, we're going to talk about some of the safety impacts of converting and also the curb space use efficiency of angle parking. And then I've actually mocked up just a couple of preliminary designs. I wouldn't recommend bringing them to someone to do, but just as a demonstration. And then I'm going to wrap up with some conclusions and recommendations from the study. So, as you know, Bellefonte currently allows parallel parking in this downtown area. This is West High Street and then South Allegheny Street between Howard and Bishop. On that spot, they've got parallel parking, but you guys desire more parking downtown and have requested a study of alternative parking plans that prioritize safety and traffic operations, but also maximizes the amount of on-street parking available. And so this is just a zoomed-in view of that T area. As I mentioned, it's currently parallel parking on both sides of the street, with some motorcycle parking available on South Allegheny Street, which shouldn't be affected by changing to angle parking. Your parking stalls are currently approximately 8 feet wide and 20 feet long. When I had met with Don previously, he had mentioned that sometimes that's a little bit small. I didn't get too far into making any changes to something like that, but that's something that could happen later on. I also wanted to note that there's potentially a queuing problem on South Allegheny Street during peak hours. And if enough people are looking to turn left from South Allegheny Street to West High Street, there can be a backup of queued vehicles on South Allegheny Street. And since there's that through lane also on South Allegheny Street there, and then some parallel parking stalls, that through lane's really important to stop that queuing problem, or at least to relieve some of that tension. So I did not consider angle parking as a possibility just out in front of the courthouse there. And lastly, as I'm sure you're all very well aware, this site is on a hill. West High Street is a very steep grade. South Allegheny is gradual to the north and south, but also still a grade, which does affect how you can park on those streets. So, jumping into some of the safety impacts, the consequences here, on a qualitative level, transportation engineers have generally advised against typical head-in angle parking since about the 1980s because it's unsafe. If you've ever used angle parking, you pull into it, and then when you're backing out, you are blind to oncoming traffic and the nearest travel lane. And so that blind backout maneuver is a huge crash risk. But then there's some less obvious things. So for angle parking, head-in angle parking, when you are unloading or loading from your trunk, you are doing so directly adjacent to the nearest travel lane. And so as a pedestrian, it's not very safe. And then this is also less intuitive, but the best example is imagine you have a child that's getting out of your car, right? You open the door and they get out and they're, likely to start running or something like that. The doors actually direct them into traffic because of that barrier that's restricting them from going to the curb. You can fix a lot of this, in theory, by doing back-in angle parking. On that qualitative side, when you've backed in, now when you're leaving the parking spot, you are no longer blacking out blind. You can see oncoming traffic, oncoming bicycles, things like that. You have much better visibility of the traffic in the area. You've also moved all of that loading to the curbside, and again with that vehicle doors example, you're now directing traffic for pedestrians to the curb. So on a qualitative level, should be looking at back-end angle parking, if anything. But then moving on, we can actually quantify some of the safety differences between angle and parallel parking. Unfortunately, this is only for head-in angle parking. There is not for back-end angle parking, but we're going to use crash modification factors to determine the exact impact, or at least a range of impacts. I've actually found 2 of these that are applicable to Bellefonte, and I checked both of them just for consistency. I'm not going to delve too deep into this. They did provide a report that is much more in-depth. Just for your time's sake, we're not going to delve too deep into them. But I calculated this for each segment that I defined previously in the study area to see if those were consistent, and just moved on from there. So we'll start out this first one, or I'm sorry, before we get into each of them, crash modification, just what is this? It's a multiplicative factor. It reflects the change in crash frequency expected due to a change in site conditions, and it's developed from data from many sites over many years, but these sites all have like similar characteristics, and then you would apply them to similar sites. So these that I found are the most applicable to Bellefonte. So for CMFs, once they're calculated, a value between 0 and 1 is predicting a decrease in crash frequency. This is what we're looking for when we do something like this. If we were to get 1, we might be okay with that. We're not expecting any kind of change. But anything greater than 1 is an increase in crash frequency. So this is the first model. Like I said, I won't get too far into the weeds on this. This is the Bonnison model. It's primarily based on the length of parking provided. This is, yeah, I won't get too far into it, but there's a factor also applied that just kind of talks about the ratio of different crashes for angle parking or parallel parking. Just kind of compares the two. We'll just.
I'd like to ask a question. Are we supposed to be seeing a PowerPoint presentation from him? Both Shauna and I only see the band show.
It's, you should be seeing it. It's up here on our screens, Joanne.
It's not on Shauna's or mine.
Dawn, what you have to do is stop share screen and then share it again, and then pick this and then go to what the screen that you're on. I learned that in harm.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so.
Does that help you, Joanne?
Yeah, she sees it now.
Yeah, we won't delve too much further into that. If you want to go to the next slide, I can just show you the results from this. Or one more. This is just picking out that factor. So that last yellow highlighted column are the CMFs for each of the segments as previously defined. As you can see, we've got values 2.2, 2.3. We're expecting to more than double crash frequency by converting to head-in angle parking from parallel parking. So it's not great. But that's just the one model, so maybe there's something else in this other model. Good. This is the simplified version, again, based on the length of parking provided for the most part, and then a factor which is provided as well from the Highway Safety Manual. Good. This was just picking that factor, again, applying it as best as possible to the Bellefonte conditions. And again, in that far category, or that far column there, we're looking at values of 2.2, 2.1. It's a little bit less than that Bonnison model, but we're still expecting to more than double crash frequency. So it's fairly consistent with the other model. So go ahead. So we should note that typically these values are published with a standard error, which would indicate how precise is this value. Can we tell if this is going to be like an exact double of crash frequency, or is there some kind of range? Since these weren't published, there's kind of a question whether or not we should trust it. And I would say yes, we should. We can at least look at this and say, yes, we're likely going to increase crash frequency. We might not be able to tell exactly how much, but the initial guesses are high. We're looking at some models that are likely going to increase crash frequency, even if we can't tell exactly how much. So then, just to summarize, because we've been through a lot of the safety impacts here, we're going to expect the conversion to more than double crash frequency This is unfortunately only for head-in angle parking, just because there are not enough examples of back-in angle parking to have published literature about this yet. But qualitatively, we could theoretically think that back-in angle parking is safer than head-in angle parking. So then that was kind of the consequences, but the reason we're looking at this in the first place is because of the benefits, and this is really how many parking spaces can we gain from converting to angle parking. And so this was actually a pretty simple calculation, back of envelope kind of thing, where we were able to just determine the maximum number of parking stalls that you could get for angle parking in a standardized just 100-foot block of on-street parking. And so to do that, I just found the length of curb that you can't use because of the parking angle. You lose just a little bit of space, and then subtracted that from the usable 100-foot standard length, and then just divided by the dimension that's with that length. I restricted this just to standard parking angles. 30, 45, 60, and 90 degrees are pretty typical parking angles, and there's not typically much variation from those. And these calculations actually apply both to head-in and back-in angle parking, because the orientation doesn't change the fact that you lose just a little bit from that initial parking. So that far category, again, didn't highlight it this time for some reason, but the top shelf there is the amount of parallel parking spaces for the typical Bellefonte stall size. In 100 feet of parking, you could get 5. And you can see as you increase the angle, you will receive more parking stalls per 100 feet. So as a whole, you'd be looking to have the highest angle possible to maximize your parking. But even at the minimum standard parking angle, you can more than double the amount of parking available on any one of your streets that are converted from parallel to angle parking. So if we can look at those benefits and say, yeah, this sounds like a great thing, we should do this, we need to understand that that also has to fit into the existing Bellefonte roadways. So I created some preliminary striping plans for both head-in and back-in angle parking, given the criteria listed here. So I'm not going to alter any of the 50-foot roadways that exist. These are governed by the Pennsylvania Code, which requires that new angle parking cannot degrade traffic operations. The designs were also advised just by the PennDOT Highway Design Manual, and considering the slope of the site as we move forward here, if we're going to do angle parking, we need to make sure that it's on a side of the street where if a car's brakes were to fail, the vehicle isn't going to roll into traffic because of the hill. So if you were going to do back-in angle parking, you'd have to have that where they would face uphill in this slot. Or if you're going to do head-in angle parking, they would need to do that on the side of the street where they would be facing downhill as they're in the parking stall. So looking at the head-in angle parking, the Pennsylvania Code actually requires that there is a maneuver area between the curb and the nearest travel lane to mitigate some of the effects of the blind back-out maneuver. And you can see that varies based on the parking angle. And as we'll see on the next slide, this actually takes up quite a bit of the existing roadway. Go ahead. So on the left side, you can see the existing conditions of that downtown area where there's a turn lane present. You've got 12-foot standard travel lanes and parallel parking on both sides of the street. And as we were looking at proposing head-in angle parking and implementing that maneuver area, the minimum that we can do is 26 feet for that 30-degree angle. And doing that actually eliminates the possibility of a turn lane or parallel parking stalls on the other side of the street. So looking at that, you've actually eliminated all of the benefits of angle parking because you've doubled parking on one side of the street, but now you've lost it on the other. So it's a wash. There's no benefit here. Could you go to the next slide? There's also, we're also likely to degrade traffic operations by doing this. We're losing a turning lane, so we're going to wind up with queues of vehicles at intersections where they just can't get through, or you're going to wind up with through vehicles behind turning vehicles who can't get through. So that's going to make things worse traffic-wise. You're also going to double the parking movements on one side of the street. So the side of the street that you wind up doing the parking on is going to be disproportionately affected as you wait for someone to back in or head in to their parking spot. And moving into the back-end angle parking designs, there's actually not that requirement of the maneuver area because there's no longer a blind parking maneuver. And so you can save quite a bit of space that way. This will be kind of more evident again on the next slide, but we've looked at this. The best way to make everything fit in here is to decrease the through lane travel width to the minimum length or minimum width. So we'll see that in just a second. So again, on the left is that existing parallel parking, exactly the same as the previous image. But on the right is proposed back-in angle parking. So like I had noted, the travel lanes go down to 10 feet. They lose 2 feet each. But you're able to keep that parallel parking on the opposite side of the street. And the back-in angle parking down at the bottom there is actually at a non-typical angle. So there's actually a little bit of wiggle room with some of the dimensions on something like this. So ultimately, I would say that converting to back-in angle parking is feasible at this point, but inadvisable. So the design could provide up to 50% more parking because you're doubling parking on the one side and you can keep the other parallel parking. And theoretically, it's safer as we talked. But the downside of this is that the back-end angle parking is likely to degrade traffic operations as well. So in addition to the parking movements like we talked about previously, we're reducing the lane width and so therefore reducing the operating speeds. So we can get less vehicles through the T study area there in the same amount of time, which is a degradation of traffic operations. Should be noted that back-end angle maneuvers are expected to take less time than parallel parking, though again, just because of the lack of examples to study, the differences are not currently quantifiable. So ultimately, my conclusions and recommendations, the moment you've all been waiting for, I'm sure. I'm suggesting that for now, for the time being, on-street parking should remain parallel. I think we're all pretty aware at this point that head and angle parking is a really high safety risk. It's going to degrade traffic operations. We don't actually receive any benefit from doing something like that, at least in current standards. Back and angle parking, you can provide additional parking, but at the cost of traffic operations, and there's just not enough information, in my opinion, to determine the full impact of conversion on safety. Which is my study area, so I should point out I'm a little bit biased, but to me safety is like the most important thing. In theory, I should note that this could be pursued further if the council deems that the risks are acceptable and you're willing to be the first, example nearby, and if PennDOT approves, because these are both state routes. I would suggest that this be tabled for a few years. It might be more advisable when more research on the pattern has been conducted. And I do know of a little bit of what's coming down the road. Not entirely sure how relevant it'll be, but the Highway Safety Manual is expecting a new edition to be published in the next couple years. And so there may be more information there, and there's always more research being done. So. With that, that is the end of my presentation. I will take any questions. My email is also listed on the next slide here if anyone has questions that would like to be answered later on.
Anybody have any questions for Robert?
I think you answered my question. Where is there an example of back-in angle parking?
The best example I was able to find just based on PennDOT standards was actually in Pottstown. They have a huge road. This is it's comparable and it's the standard for PennDOT at this point, but it's not comparable to Bellefonte in that it has a way higher average daily traffic. The road is like 75 feet wide. It's massive. They've got bike lanes. It's divided. It's just not comparable to the conditions in Bellefonte. So that's one of the, I would say probably the best example and the most relevant to this, but I wouldn't say that it is a good comparison.
Yeah, I just can't recall ever in my life back-in angle parking.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Then you have the front angle parking like in Lewisburg.
Yes, yeah. There's head-in angle parking all
very
over the place.
tricky to get out.
Mm-hmm.
It truly is. So yeah, I can see why that's scrapped.
Yeah.
There's back in ankle parking in Hershey also, but the roadway's a lot wider.
A lot wider.
It's flat, and I think it was divided also.
I would just add, Jacob, first of all, I want to thank you for doing the study for the borough, working with you and walking with you in town this summer. The sustainability program, we've been in it for a few years. I would just say this is one of the most comprehensive studies that we've had, and I thought you did an excellent job with it, so we really appreciate it. We're looking forward to the report, which we'll pass around, and if there's anything else that that you need, or please let us know.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the next. We have
Dan Nestor.
Dan?
Oh, but they're leaving. Those folks are leaving, I think, so you're fine. Take care, we'll see you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, Ian.
Hi, Jacob, thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight. I'm here because I'm with Center County MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. There's a lot of acronyms out there, so I'll try not to use many. So what we do is worry essentially about funding for transportation improvements. And much of that funding is federal and state, and then many times there's a local match component that's required. And most commonly it's a 20% match. But in order to program projects, there's quite a few documents that we have to manage and update. And the big one is the long-range transportation plan. And that's updated roughly every 5 years, and depending upon the MPO, it's either a 20-year view or a 30-year view of what the area would like to see in terms of transportation improvements. Center County uses a 30-year review, and we are coming up on the 30-month time that we have in March of 2023 to update our long-range transportation plan. So the reason I'm here tonight is because back in 19, my predecessors were here talking to you and your predecessors about transportation. And there was a laundry list of things that were desired. It's a very difficult thing to say, yes, we can fix all of these in 5 years, but we like to have this information so that if funding becomes available, we can make some attempt at applying for it. So your staff did a really nice job of taking a look at the first workshop that was done in 19 and provided some, what I believe are some thoughts on priorities and concerns on the first page. And if we could just run through those real quick and see if that seems reasonable. So the first one is the 150 corridor, including Phoenix Avenue, Mill Street, Stony Batter, and Water Street. And during my time with the MPO, this has been an item that is on our list. We know there's a lot of concerns and a lot of issues in this area. There was a feasibility study for Phoenix Avenue. I think it was like 3 years ago, but more needs to be done to kind of move this area of concern forward to some sort of a resolution to improve the area. For funding right now, preliminary engineering is slated for 2025, and by then we would have a better idea of the other components, so utilities, right-of-way, and construction. At this point, it's really difficult to say what the cost of those would be, especially in this current market. Did anyone have any questions or thoughts about that?
I would think that's still our number one
Okay.
concern in the borough.
That's good to know. All right. Then if I could move on to the West Bishop Street and South Spring Street. I know there's been a lot of work going on with the municipal parking lot to improve sidewalk access, and that is moving along through TASA grant. And it looks like for here there's potentially a modification, if you will, about creating a bump out on Bishop. That is definitely a possibility, but it probably would not rise to being like a long-range transportation plan item just because of the scale of it. But certainly it's something that if there's a small grant that we could pass on, that would be something that we would certainly want to share with you. Is there anything else about that area that you think has a concern, or you have needs for, or you're gonna do this project as it is now and see what happens later?
Well, we are working on that, and with the TASA grant in addition, we have 2 years of CDBG funding. So the area that you're talking about, Ralph and I were looking at that the other day. I mean, we'd love to do that there, but there just happens to be a storm drain right next to the curb. So, you know, we're thinking that would probably be like an additional 25,000 maybe. That was just a guess, just to, you know, because we'd have to move it.
Yes, yes, I certainly don't know. So, sure. But that would be a separate activity then?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the courthouse and the Diamond, I know you've been working, trying to figure out some things in terms of safety for that area. You retained Pannoni for a little bit, and wanted to see what your thoughts were about future improvements for that. And is it something that potentially we should consider while we work on the long-range transportation plan?
I think from the work we've done up there with the crosswalks, that was the main thing that we needed to get done for pedestrian safety. And I
The
think
lighting.
the lighting
Which
much
I think we
better
can,
now.
yeah, we can do even more there.
Yeah.
Okay.
on that end.
Okay.
And we do plan to move on Allegheny Street in both directions in the midstream crosswalks to do the same thing with the concrete.
Okay.
And hopefully continue throughout the town.
Right,
till it's
right.
finished.
So, may I ask something? This is Joanne. We had talked a long time ago about rain gardens on each side of East High Street to help with stormwater. Is that something that is included in the long-term transportation planning to help deal with stormwater runoff that's affecting our streets?
So typically, rain gardens are part of a larger project, so it's not unheard of to have that installed. But having just the rain garden installed is, in terms of scope, is probably too small for what we do at the MPO.
Okay, thanks.
There was mention about lighting with illuminating buildings. That's really outside the MPO's efforts. There may be some DCED funding that's out there. They have a great website to go through, as you all know, that might provide some assistance with that. In terms of connectivity to destinations, these look like they have potential. You know, just speaking in generalities. I'd have to say, though, you know, looking at these, one of the biggest challenges with connectivity when it comes to walking and biking is having the right-of-way under control. So without that right-of-way known and either under agreement or under control in terms of ownership, it's very difficult for these projects to move forward. I'm going to suggest that if you are interested in these, to prioritize them, think about what it is that you as a municipality have bandwidth for, And then through that prioritization, think about what you potentially could offer as a match. Like I said earlier, all of these programs, these funding programs require a match for the most part. And having a plan that shows right-of-way that is ready shows that you have invested in this process and you're willing to take the next step toward construction. Grant reviewers tend to be a little hesitant to fund a grant where right-of-way is not clear. They have found over the years it drags the projects out very long, and sometimes they don't even get completed. Did you have any thoughts about those walking and biking facilities?
We talked about it, we met about it before, we looked at, what was it called, Joanne, what the streets we were, can't remember the term of it.
Complete street.
Connect,
Streets program.
Complete street.
complete streets.
Yeah.
And, you know, with the hills and things that we have, it's difficult with the sidewalks that we have or don't have, or is difficult because that's up to the residents to put, in the you know, through the residential area to put those in. And, you know, that's the difficulty.
However, our zoning does say that there is, the right-of-way is owned by the borough on every single street in town. So that part of the issue I don't think is an issue. It's the sidewalks that aren't there that's the problem.
Right, but there should be a way to share the road with bikes, and the bicyclists need to follow their rules, which would be the same as the driver driving a car. And I see a lot of that where they don't.
Right.
And it creates more of an issue, not only for that person, but for the driver. Especially up going through up by University Park Airport, a lot of people ride bikes on that narrow road.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not much of a berm to get off. And it wouldn't take much to have an issue there.
So related to that, complete streets and making connections, the MPO is going to be working toward an active transportation plan for the entire county. And it's very early days in terms of developing the scope, but we would like to go beyond the center region and have either a corridor or a set of corridors that make sense for future analysis that would hopefully work toward future funding improvements. It's pretty much unrealistic. What we're doing is to start from scratch and say, yes, we can, touch every municipality in the center county. But we do think that certain parts of the county have potential to be kind of the first, if you will, to be reviewed. So stay tuned for that. We're hoping to start that next year. And then increased transit service between Bellefonte and State College. I have reached out to Greg Kausch, who is our transit planner. He is aware of this concern. He's heard it from other people. They are right now working on their Reimagine study. It should be done this month. And hopefully there'll be some plans and programs to address some of those concerns. At this point, I can't speak to it because the document hasn't been released. Now, with the rest of the document, there's quite a bit here in terms of information. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it and if anything kind of jumped out at you that sounds like a terrible idea, or, this is missing kind of thing. So I can kind of go over some highlights here if that's helpful, or.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So tied again to the Milesburg Rail Trail, I get the impression that is something that is of interest, and if there's some way to move that forward, we should be keeping that on our radar. In terms of, I see some things related to development with the armory and the waterfront. and then the potential for a warehouse on Mill Street and Axman Road. I'm not familiar with that. But that all kind of that one specifically ties into Phoenix Avenue and 150. So if there's information that would be helpful for the MPO to kind of keep that in mind while we're developing the long-range plan, that would be great. The other item that kind of caught my eye from staff was the what's happening in Benner Township and the increasing development that is occurring there. Jim Saylor and I have talked about this. It's been something that has been on the MPO's radar, predates me. And it's something to consider getting together with Spring and Benner and maybe doing a small area plan. Those are typically planning exercises that are focused on a corridor or a part of the county to try to see how future planning efforts can improve those corridors. It's not been something that's been done outside the central region, but some of the regional municipalities have done that. Just food for thought. The one that was interesting was on page 7 about footbridges over busy streets. These can be incredibly challenging. You're dealing with right-of-way, ADA, and it is not, in the day of limited funding, it is not an easy, it's asked or looked upon, generally speaking, favorably. You need to have a huge proponent for something like this, as well as the right amount of space. And those two items can make it very challenging. And those were the items that caught my eye. Was there anything that caught anyone else's eye?
So when you're talking about Spring Township and Benner Township, you're talking about the growth like in Benner Township. I guess part of it could be Springfield, when they crisscross up there.
Right, and how it...
wouldn't that, looking at what they're doing and, the new stores coming in, I guess a couple more that haven't been started yet, they're going to be in the same area as the Giant. And then beyond that, you have the areas to develop these industrial areas. Mm-hmm. Would anything like this affect that growth? I don't have a problem with businesses coming in because it brings people into Bellefonte and other places. So that's just a question of.
I guess I'm not understanding the question.
If somebody wants to come in and put a business in, kind of like Giant's doing now,
right.
or is Benner Township going to get pushback from people wanting to get not having the business but having a right of way or making a stereo or something like that?
Well, I think it really depends on who the stakeholders are and who has that interest. I think there are opportunities for improvements. Benner has to, have a seat at the table, just like any other municipality, to pursue those things. And there is a lot of, perhaps, potential for pushback when it comes to bike and ped facilities. But I think in the long run, you're doing your community a better service if you're at least having those discussions and trying to figure out a way to improve that. I personally am.
What would help is when they repave the roads as they do, that they add a lane.
Yeah, so we actually spoke to the maintenance person for District 2, and when it comes to regular maintenance, they are limited in what they can do in terms of changing the right-of-way. So if they were to go in and pave, they could reevaluate the striping, because they've basically taken the stripes off, and see, does it make sense to reduce the lane widths, still in conformance with what's required, but then resulting in a wider shoulder. They are willing to consider activities like that. Beyond that, we haven't had enough discussion to know if there's anything else that they'd be willing to do.
You know, when they started give a bike for 4 feet. Some of that 4 feet puts you into the other lane, and so if they're gonna do that, if that's what they're gonna ask you to do, then they need to put the provisions in to be able to let you do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is if you as a municipality wanted to pursue something like that, in terms of maintenance, we would let you know when the district is anticipating those maintenance projects. So there can be a discussion, you're kind of prepared and can see if it is feasible. We're not saying that they would just go ahead and do it. That would be very unlikely.
I noticed one of the comments in here was, I thought it had to do with the sidewalks and making them less wide to create more drivability, I guess, for the cars and bikes to mingle together better in downtown Bellefonte.
Yeah, there can be a, give and take depending upon what is needed. I'm not, I don't know that Bellefonte could really benefit from reduced sidewalks, to be honest, but if there's a situation where it was needed, it would certainly be considered.
Any other questions from council? But you're on the MPO.
I just, Ann knows me pretty well. Phoenix Avenue.
Yes.
Really a sore spot with me at the MPO. We keep getting bounced backwards. And
Well, it's on the tip.
I know.
We're gonna get
Finally.
preliminary
Yeah,
engineering.
yeah.
You may not like the answer, though.
Well, we have to go one direction. We don't want to go in reverse, so whatever the answer is, it is. But,
Okay.
a lot of these things are probably beyond my lifetime, but,
I've been at a plan a long time ago for that Phoenix Avenue, nobody will listen to it. They'd rather spend $200 million and take a road around and bring it back in than use the red light that's up on Willowbank Street now and put a red light down at the bottom. Put the red lights on at the same time, put the stop signs in between those two red lights, run the traffic, red lights go green again, and it goes back to the normal traffic. And you're done.
makes it
It's
sound
that
so simple.
It does.
It is that simple, and nobody will listen to
There's
it.
a lot of other things that are being
I'm gonna
considered.
get two of my other stooges and come in here
Yeah.
in January.
You sat through the presentation for the band shop.
Yes.
We've got the Titan Hollow and the redevelopment of the old Ciro complex. And that intersection is really important to the commerce of the borough. And we've stressed that, and things are starting to develop now. We're hopeful for a new hotel. That's just a real important intersection for the entry to our borough. So, I keep reminding folks of that.
Just to pick up on what Doug is saying, that, of course, the former Ciro complex is in Spring Township. Early on, a year or so ago, we wrote letters together, both the Spring and the borough, supporting work around Phoenix Avenue. It is a multi-municipal project. They usually score higher. I know we all would benefit from something being done there. Pedestrian access into town,
Right.
The traffic issues. It's, we're in the area of redevelopment. We have these old factory properties. They gotta have new life and new blood put into them. So we're not like the new interchanges or the new Park Avenues or anything. So I would just hope the MPO looks at these older towns and places that are built out. They are what they are, and we gotta find ways to make them work today in 2022, 2023, and so on. So whatever you can do, we'd appreciate it.
Right.
Please keep us informed about this county plan. Maybe we can work together and try to get some efforts that would benefit multiple municipalities.
No, that's great to hear. I appreciate that. Phoenix Avenue is the project I have heard about when I first started, and I'm still hearing about it, so.
It's sort of, you know, as you know, we have the Logan Branch Bridge that's deteriorating.
Yep.
We have the now 150 deteriorating along the stream. There's just, that corridor is in dire need of attention. And we've been trying to make that case, and we have. And you've, the MPO has been very receptive and listened to our needs. But it's time, like Mr. Stewart said, to start thinking about some of the older towns in the county that need some resurrection as well as the more popular areas in Center County. So that's it.
No, that's fine, I appreciate that. So kind of as a side note, the MPO does, do I still have time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
You're fine.
I can just keep talking.
For 5 more minutes.
Okay, so, thanks, I won't do that. The MPO has a bills subcommittee, which is reviewing all of the discretionary grants that are just kind of like falling from the sky. They, as a subcommittee, they want to pursue some of these grants. The complexity of the submission is just mind-blowing. But we are hoping that in the next year, we're going to get some supplemental planning fund assistance to kind of point us in the right direction so we can have successful applications. And Phoenix Avenue potentially, this is just me, not the MPO speaking, potentially would be a good candidate for some of these grants that are looking at specifically aging infrastructure and resiliency and trying to deal with the challenges that exist, like you said, in older towns. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to find something for the MPO and maybe even something for Bellefonte. But it'll be a little bit before you hear from us again about that.
Thank you, Ann.
All right,
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
With all the presentations finished, we will conclude our work session at 7:22. Keep going around and around.
Bumper sticker I have hanging out in my garage says.
All right, folks, here we go.
The only sign of.
Seeing that, are you ready?
I think they're ready.
Pittsburgh. 64.
Call the council meeting, the Bellefonte Council meeting to order. We welcome everybody to the Bellefonte Borough Council meeting. We'll do our best to start council meetings on time and end on time. And to the room acoustics, please speak up when talking so that people can hear you and what you're saying. All comments and reports shall be kept to 3-minute maximum. With that, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are in order. Roll call.
Mr. Bernier?
Here.
Mr. Brackbill?
Here.
Ms. Cleaton?
Here.
Ms. Stan?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Is excused.
She's excused. Ms. Sedgwick?
Here.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
By Zoom.
And Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Additions to the council meeting agenda.
Randy, I'd like to add just a quick video under the reports for the fire department, if I could.
Just make me a note on. I'll add that too. So move down through my list here. Okay, so we'll add, we need a motion. I guess we've been motioned in second, but I don't know.
It's just,
I think there's no action item, but just a
Okay, no
note.
action item,
Yeah.
so we'll add that, okay, to reports.
So isn't there an action item with the consent agenda with the invoice from the lawyer?
Yeah, I'm going to add that on, Joe. Oh, yeah, we'll add that on. You want to make that a motion?
Sure.
Because we're voting on it. So we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, Veneer. Motion made by Joint Tosti Vasey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, and then, so we'll add the Stover McLaughlin. And there's nothing council has to do with these next two, but we'll have a special presentation at the end of the meeting, as well as an executive committee meeting following the meeting to discuss the evaluations. Any other additions? Seeing none, we'll move on to our public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to speak on their comments about the 2023 borough budget?
Basically, we did send out the budget document. It's on our website. I think Dawn's going to bring it up and sort of walk through it real quick. Page down. Again, this is on our website. We start out with the budget message. Talk about our tax base. We started priority budgeting this year. Keep the one down. The good news is we're not proposing a real estate tax increase on any of the real estate-based funds, so stop for a second. And the only increases are, at this point in time, are in the utility funds. One is related to the refuse bill that customers get, and that is because Center County Solid Waste, Recycling and Solid Waste Authority are raising their fees, the tipping fees that we pay when we take garbage there to the transfer station. Those fees are going up, so this refuse fund that we operate receives no tax funding. It's solely supported by customer rates and customer bills or fees. So we pass on the increase to the customers. There's no increase on our end. It's a result of the Solid Waste Authority's fees going up, so we pass that over to the customer. Likewise, their recycling collection fees are going up, so likewise, we have to increase our billing fees that we bill for the costs that we bill to customers. The refuse garbage fee is going up $2 a quarter for your quarterly bill. The recycling fee is going up $6.75 per quarter. Again, we send out quarterly bills. On the other utilities, water and sewer, the borough authority sets those rates. They're going up. The authority decided on December 13th, last Tuesday, to raise the water rate 10 cents per 1,000 gallons. And sewer rates would go up $1 on your quarterly bill, or $4 for the year. So really, the utility area is the only rate increases. Again, there's no real estate rates, real estate taxes proposed or planned for an increase in the budget. We had a tentative approval of the budget on December 5th. It was advertised or posted on December 9th for comments, with the note that action would be taken this evening. We'd have the public hearing this evening, and here we are. So in this budget document, there's a couple of things we point out real quick. Table of contents, if you want to look down through, it's like a book. We try to make it very user-friendly for citizens to look through our budget. Any time of the year it'll be posted, but it's there. If you keep going a little bit, we put in a very simple, easy to read budget in brief page right here. It lists, it lists the amount of each fund. We have 13 separate funds that have a separate revenue and expenditure spreadsheet. We keep funds and money separate because that's how we do it in government. And so we have the balancing number. We always have to balance our budgets. So that's what the amount column is. If you page down a little bit further, I can give you the total. Our total amount of our budget, both operating and capital, is $14,645,211. And each sub-fund or amount is listed there. The next column is the source. So it's either real estate or a utility fee primarily, with some minor exceptions. Like, for example, the state fuel tax, which we call highway aid or liquid fuel tax, is money collected through the sale of gasoline and then sent to municipalities. It's, the state gets a share for PennDOT and municipalities get a share for local roads. It very specifically, or has very specific uses, and is audited separately, so we keep it separate in a fund for auditing purposes. But every fund, every source is listed, and then the next column we list whether there's an increase or not. Fortunately, you'll see a lot of nones or no's. We're not increasing things again, which is very fortunate this year. The primary reason or way we're doing this, we have a very small tax base. It is difficult to balance our budget. We have a high percentage of non-taxable or tax-exempt real estate. We're not adding new neighborhoods. We're not adding new wage earners. So it's always difficult each year. But we're primarily doing that because in 2022, we were able to come up with some reserves or monies left over, and we're going to take approximately $78,000 of reserves from 22, put them into 23, and balance the budget. Now that's where we left off on December 5th. So that's why we're able to balance the budget without a tax increase by using approximately $78,000 of reserve funds that were unspent in 2022. I'm going to page down a little bit, see what else is here. We give a reader's guide. There's just a paragraph, again, what else is in this budget book, we call it. It's a little paragraph or sentence of what's in this document. You can look, this will sort of skim over that, but it's there, and we'll touch on a few documents before, or a few items before we get into the spreadsheets. That's more of the same, again, same idea, a little summary of what's in there. This is an example of, or this is an overview of the real estate tax millage system rates, the way we create a mill, or what a value of a mill is. There's 3 taxing bodies, the borough, the school district, the county. That's an example of the millage rates that each of us have, and then how it's calculated based on assessed value, not market value. It is difficult to understand until you work with it for a while, so it's just a one-page overview of the millage rate system for Bellefonte and Bellefonte taxpayers. You can go on, Tom. Again, we clearly say no change to real estate taxes are proposed. This is just a copy of the tax ordinance. There was a change a year or two ago about if there was no tax increase, you could use a resolution in place of an ordinance. I always like to advertise an ordinance just in case there is a change. So I try to word things either ordinance or resolution. But again, fortunately, we're not proposing a change to the taxes, but we do advertise it both ways just in case. We list our current office officials and staff. There's a nice directory or a listing of who we are and so on. You can continue on, Dawn. We have an organizational chart with the citizens above us all, because that's who we work for. And that's everybody here at our place and our organization. This year I added in our strategic plan, goals, and recommendations that came out of our plan from 2021, the strategic management plan. They're there. If someone wants to look at the budget, that's kind of what we're trying to do with the priority-based budgeting. Aim our funds, look at how our funds line up with these goals and recommendations. We talked a little bit about them, trying to be more efficient with our services, trying to raise revenue where we can, those types of things. That's where that came out of. So we listed that, we put that in the budget as well. You can go on down. This is a list of our 2022 accomplishments. I would say look it over. We may have missed something, but I want to thank Dawn for helping putting that together. Tried to list what we accomplished. We also had every meeting, we had our spreadsheet. We tried to follow and check, mention which items were accomplished. So we got a lot of the data from that. Of course, we have 2023 goals, action items. These are ideas that as staff we thought or knew we were working on, the ball field, some of the bigger projects and so on, should be here. Again, if we missed something, please let us know, but we took a chance at putting what we thought on this paper. And this is an example. This is the first spreadsheet fund. Again, we have 13 separate funds, each with a separate revenue and expenditure set of spreadsheets. At the top of every fund, we have a header page. It has a quick facts, whether there's any increases or not proposed, any small bits of information about the fund. And then, again, the entire list, every exact spreadsheet of revenue and expenditure that we have that was posted, and that's what you see there. It's the same information that Lori uses, produces, that's what you have there. But we break it down so it's easy to read. Revenues, expenditures, if there's subcategories like streets, planning, zoning, what have you, we break that down into separate areas of expenditures underneath the appropriate fund. So that's all there. Again, there's 13, basically from this point on to the end of the document, you're going to go through all 13 funds and look at the revenues, expenditures, quick facts, anything related to the fund should be there. And it's, we're always open for questions. Unfortunately, we don't usually get any questions, but we value the document. We like it because it helps explain things to our citizens, and anybody can go see where, line item by line item, where expenses are, where funds, where revenue's coming from, and so on. So we've improved that document a lot over the last few years, and I think it's very user-friendly. But that's just an overview of our budget document, budget book. At this point, we have it available and approve it hopefully this evening.
You and your staff should take a bow. Do a good job with that.
Well, I do want to say, I want to thank our staff. I know Lori left a little bit early, Julie helped with it, Dawn helped with it, and the department heads helped build it right from way back, July, August. They start working on, what's wearing out, what needs to be replaced, what some of the needs are, where we can be more efficient, can we move funds, and those kinds of things. So it starts, with through the ranks and through the departments and works its way to here. And I certainly want to thank council members and the mayor for your dedication. It's a long year, and then from August roughly to now, it's a lot of struggle to try to balance everything and figure things out. But here we are, and I want to thank everybody. It's always a team effort.
Well, you set this fine example as the borough manager with your staff with no tax increase, so you got to keep up the good work.
That's a lot of pressure.
I think on page 2 or something, it says 2022 budget in brief. I think it should.
We corrected that in
okay.
Dawn's document. You You I
Okay,
noticed
okay.
that after
Thank
I sent
you.
it out. I
Thanks.
apologize. There's a few typos we noticed on
Thank you.
Friday. So.
Thanks. Very minor.
Before you even saw it, we changed Mayor Wilson to Mayor Johnson. We did catch that one.
Well, keep up the good work. Thank the staff.
Very nice. Thank you.
Okay,
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn the public hearing. Is this when we have a chance to comment now?
Sure.
Public hearing?
Well,
Yeah. Isn't this our time to talk?
You can. We're going to have an action item later, but it's up to you.
Oh,
Yeah, members can.
This isn't about the budget, this is just a public comment.
No, we're not there.
Okay.
No, we're just a public hearing.
Okay.
I want to get out of this. So we got a motion by Ken, I need a
Well, I
second.
missed it last week.
I'll
so-
second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the public hearing has been adjourned at
7:49.
7:40. Public comment, we'll start with Mr. Grenier and the trivia question. I'll get that done.
Get my Google.
It's holiday themed. Just for a brief moment, think of the song Winter Wonderland. Get that in your mind and tell me what the name of the snowman is in the song Winter Wonderland. Well,
Frosty, remember that?
no.
It's the only one I knew.
Yeah.
My wife said this was a good one.
It is a
What's
good
the
one.
snowman's name in Winter
He'll be
Wonderland?
harsh and brown. Mr. No Man or something. What's his name?
In the meadow we can build a snowman.
He'll be
Pretend that he is
Parson Brown.
Parson Brown.
I thought they were calling Parson Brown to do the Mary.
Thought that was gonna be too easy, Don. That one worked out all right. See, everybody's smiling.
Very
And
good.
plus you started humming that song, didn't you, Mayor?
He didn't have time to look it up either.
I was trying to think of the song.
And it wasn't football related.
No,
Good.
it wasn't.
Good voice,
Sorry,
by
mister.
the way.
Yes.
Yeah, not bad. Well, I've been asking it to people all week to practice.
I always thought they were calling the parson to perform the Mary.
No,
That's the name of the snowman.
the snowman married.
Yeah, he was the parson. All right, more public comments. Doug, it's your turn.
Well, I should let the mayor do this, but earlier, I don't know if everybody had tuned in, but we had Senator Jake Corman here. Do you want to take over? And I just wanted to, we did that during the work session, and some people might have not have been tuned in for the work session.
Right.
Maybe you want to fill some folks in
Sure,
on how generous he's been to the borough of Bellefonte.
Yes, we thought it was an excellent idea to honor Senator Jake Corman with his retirement this evening. He had another obligation tonight, so we invited him to the work session, which he graciously accepted. Jake has been very instrumental in a lot of things in the district that he worked in, especially for the borough of Bellefonte. And he has been a great friend of the borough, and just what an incredible family and community man. And you know, I'm sure he is on to greater things, but he definitely will be missed. And if we were to list everything that he has done for the borough of Bellefonte, we would be here for quite a while. So we wish Senator Corman the best of luck, and we're all very, very fortunate to have had him stand up very, very proudly, I might add, for Bellefonte and the surrounding areas.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sure, thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, since we did Jake earlier, we don't have any special presentations at this time. So we'll move into communications.
Do you want me to go over these?
Yep, go ahead.
First one is from Easter Seals of Western and Central Pennsylvania, requesting use Talleyrand Park Saturday, June 10th, 2023 for their walk fundraiser. Just a little bit of background, they just want to do the walk. It would encompass both sides of the park, the traditional side and the expanded side, but they're not really using facilities other than using the park space or perimeter of some kind. And all they're really wanting to do is also reserve the dates and then, you know, work out maybe some finer details and come back at a later point. But they're hoping to reserve these dates at this point.
Okay, I'll call for a motion and second to approve the fundraiser walk for Easter Stills in Talleyrand Park on Saturday, June 10th, 2023, and it runs from 8 to noon.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Dan,
I'll second it, Clayton.
second Clayton, discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
The first question was, I wasn't clear on the application. Is this sides of the park or just one side of the park?
The walk would be encompass both sides of the park. They're willing to come back with more details. All they want to do is reserve the dates at this point in time.
Okay, so if that's true, then the rental fee would be $400 since this is not a Bellefonte-based nonprofit. Is that correct?
If we read the true sense of the application, yes, but they want to come back with details. They don't really want to occupy both sides other than some kind of path or some kind of walk, but they're willing to come back and show you their plans once they know the dates are accepted by council and all that.
So it's a conditional approval, Joanne,
Yeah, all
until they
they
come
want
back
is,
with.
all they want is the dates at this point,
So what we're saying is the dates will deal with the
details.
registration and rental
Yes.
fees at a later time.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to save the date and time for
Easter seals on June 10th, 2023, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Next item was a email, I believe, that was concerned about speeding on East Howard Street.
Yeah, I'm going to call for a second and for a motion and a second to request Chief Weaver to monitor speeds of vehicles on Howard Street between Ridge Street and McAllister Streets, starting in January and ending in February 2023, with recommendations and data to be provided to council at the February 21st, 2023 council meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Clayton.
Clayton?
Second.
Sedgwick. Since you brought the cookies.
Works every time.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And next one.
Good to go?
Yep.
Next item is a letter from the state, they call it SHPO, but State Historic Preservation Office, regarding the PennDOT wall replacement, repair, permanent repair, and they're in concurrence with PennDOT and what the Borough Council approved, that repair has no effect on the Historic District or National Register District. They're good with the project.
Have you contacted them to go forward with the project?
After last council meeting, I relayed council's approval.
Okay.
And that was relayed to probably this office.
Great.
And the feedback is they're okay with it.
Perfect. Thank you, Ralph.
Yes.
I have one more thing for communications. I should have done our public comment, but I'm moving along here. So what I'm doing here, it's been my pleasure and honor to serve as your council president in 2022. When we meet in January 3rd, 2023 for the new rotation process, the first order of business is to elect Mr. Doug Johnson as council president from vice president, followed by Mr. Bernier as vice president from pro tem. Also at our meeting, we'll nominate an elected council member to fill the then open pro tem position. So I hope all the best to each of you upcoming leaders for this. 2022 has been a great year for Bellefonte, and we've attained many goals and successes with goals in process for starting in 2023. We've revised and rearranged our agendas, reducing time off the meetings. We removed standing committees and completed our work as a whole council. Our work session agendas were revised in keeping with the 55-minute time period. I sincerely want to thank our residents, our business, our ABC volunteers, our council, our mayor and our borough staff, and our management, Ralph Stewart and Don Holderman, for their guidance. Together, let's move Bellefonte forward in 2023 for the years that follow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you,
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you for your time and
Your
effort.
leadership.
Randy.
Absolutely.
It's been,
I'll give you a warm-up when you're ready. This was a busy weekend. You got the evaluation.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Randy, can I make a comment about these public comments now? When we just talked about the letter, is it still in order to make a comment about that?
We're going backward, but yeah.
Hey, I know we voted on it. I just wanted to say that I feel many of you feel the same way, but I don't think there's something more important that we can do as council members. This gentleman writes this letter and he addresses it to the police department, the mayor, and the members of Borough Council, and it's a well-written letter, and it talks about safety and security of his family and his neighbors. You know, these are the types of things that get sent in by the people who elected us, that I don't think there's something we do that's more important. And I just wanted you guys to know that's how I felt about it. I see these letters, I've been seeing them, we all see them. I know you guys all feel, I'm saying it out loud for everybody to hear. You know, it took me a while to catch on, but you see these people take the time to sit down and write a well-written letter. They're not yelling, they're not screaming, they're not pointing out our deficiencies. They're asking for help. And I'm glad that it went this way, and I'm glad that he wrote the letter, and I hope that he gets some resolution. And he ends it by saying, please reach out to me. I look forward to talking to somebody. So I hope that, by the motion that you made, I hope that's what happened. So,
Ken, I second that. You know, when I got the the email, very, very respectful, and I back and forth with him a couple times. I thanked him for being respectful, and immediately got in touch with Chief, said, hey, we need to take a look at this a little bit closer, and I feel the same way, and that's what my mayor's report's going to be on a little bit tonight.
No, I didn't mean that.
No, but it was a very respectful, well-written letter, and that's what our community is all about, safety and neighbors, looking out for neighbors.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you, Randy. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. We have actually 6 items because we added Stover McLaughlin. So we do have revisions for the council meeting minutes, so I'll ask to pull that. And then I'll call for a motion and second to approve the budget versus actual November 2022, the budget versus actual summary November 2022, the treasurer's report for November 2022, and the voucher summary report for November 2022, and also the Stover McLaughlin invoice. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Cleve.
And a second?
Second, Dan.
Second by Dan. Motion by Clayton. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving, here we go. Budget versus actual November 2022. Budget versus actual summary 2022 November. Treasurer's report November 2022. Voucher summary November 2022 and Stover McLaughlin invoice. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
The motion carries. And then on the council minutes, Joanne, I have your revisions here first, and I'll go over them. On page 1, I see you scratched out all members present because they're already either excused or they've attended. That shows up in the list. Under staff present, we crossed Harry Brooks off and is excused. Then under page 2, under communications, Doug Johnson and Bernier second to approve a Girl Scout service 414 to walk and sing carols in the borough. Apparently, walk and was not in the original minutes. And on page 5, about halfway down the page, it says follow up on one-way signage on Ridge Street between Curtin and East Curtin and East Beaver Street. And an email from Mark Hood was given to us. And at the end of that, no action was taken by council. And then the last page is page 5. The list of members of the public that attended this meeting is missing. It needed to be added. So it was added here to the table, Joanne, and just we kind of give some reminders to that needs to be part of the minutes when these come out.
Thank you.
And then on my revisions, I think we kind of doubled up on some of these. Under reports, mayor was spelled wrong, so I just corrected the spelling on Mayor Johnson's title. And then corrected something in the motion by Mr. Doug Johnson, seconded by Ms. Dan. And there was one nay by Ms. Toasty Vasey. That was on page 5. That was the discussion on the concrete wall. And I'm sure I've changed the word from whatever it was to management under follow-up by the borough management of compost bagging machine. The machine has been ordered by and management anticipates a spring delivery. And on page 5, level 3 EV chargers. I corrected, I guess, the wording on possible. There are possible grants. I changed that to possible. And then a call for a motion and second to approve, looking at the possibilities for Bellefonte. And then we had a motion that went on. So that's all I did was added the call for a motion and second to approve, and that was it. So do I have a motion to approve the revised minutes from December 5th?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Bernier. Do I have a second?
A second, Dan.
Second by Dan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign. Motion carries. Takes care of pretty much this. And we're going to move into some reports. And the first one will be with Mayor Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, just to go back to what we were talking about a little bit, just a reminder, last month, on my mayor report, we said make sure your cars are cleaned off of snow and ice and debris. And I just want to add to that, just reiterate, we received a letter of speeding on Howard Street and some other streets. Take your time, slow down. We live in such a great community. We always have people walking the streets, walking in the park. Take your time, slow down a little bit, and I know we're all probably guilty of that from time to time. But take your time, watch your speed, just recognize the community that we live in and the people walking, and just take your time and slow down a little bit.
Thank you. Next report would be for the police department. Chief Weaver is not here.
He's not feeling good.
Yeah, and that the main thing that Chief and I talked about was the letter and the steps that we're going to take to and hopefully come up with a plan, and hopefully that will help. Just by some of the little things that we're doing will help the speed in that area.
Okay. Can you make sure he gets a message on or the council action taken tonight as well for that?
Absolutely, I sure will.
Thank you. That brings us to Gina.
Good evening, council. We did have a planning commission meeting last Monday. The information for that is in your packets. Are there any questions about that? Okay.
There's no recommendations.
No, there's no recommendations at this time because people that are interested in applying to ABCs can do so until the end of the year. And then, although we'll figure out maybe how to coordinate because planning commission won't then meet again before you guys do your appointments. But if if they want to make a recommendation, I think we can do that via email and then get that to council. So that's the same thing with HARB as well. We do have a couple volunteer applications for the Historic Review Board. We are allowing any others that may want to apply until the end of the year, and HARB did make a recommendation at their meeting to reappoint Pat Long and Gay Dunn in their positions, and then in addition to that, there is one additional vacancy that could be filled there. So with the HARB meeting, we did have a meeting last week as well. All of that information is there. There are 3 project approvals to make. This is in my memo to council, but I'll just mention that the 147 East Lynn Street was a retroactive approval, and so its approval as written is in my memo, and then just, I didn't want to take up space on the actual agenda, so if you have questions about that, you can ask. But the motion would be to approve the projects as presented: 101 South Allegheny Street, which is State Burger for a business sign; 127 South Allegheny Street, which is Atelier for a business sign; and then 147 East Lynn Street, which is a retroactive porch floor and stair replacement.
Okay, so I'll call for a motion and a second to recommend approval of 101 South Allegheny Street, State Burger, a business sign; 127 South Allegheny Street, Altelier, is I saying that right?
Yeah.
Business sign, and retroactive porch floor and stair replacement for 147 East Lynn Street. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Sedgwick,
Joanne, I'll get you do it, and then I'll second and make my comments after.
And
Joanne will have it this
Joanne
time.
seconds. Okay, discussion.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what Gina was saying, is this 147 East Lynn Street, as I understand from her notes, this was retroactive porch replacement, conditional approval, and then any future replacement of this porch has to go back or be approved under original materials or something that is acceptable to Harbin, not what they actually put in this time. So that what's in there is not approved for future.
Right, so just to clarify, the porch was replaced, I'll put this like in layman's term, because honestly, that's how I understand it. The porch and stairs were kind of replaced with like deck boarding, which wouldn't have been something that Harb would have necessarily recommended for approval. They would have asked for a tongue and groove and you know, certain materials that would be appropriate for the historic district. They are approving this. Again, as you can see in the memo, with the condition that it's going to be stained or painted to match what it looked like before. Right now it's just the wood color. And then if that porch and stairs would be replaced in the future, they're going to be like, obviously they'll come to Harb as opposed to not. And then, you know, they'll have that discussion about having a tongue and groove boarding or that sort of material. So, and the applicant understood all that, and so.
Any other discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving at 147 East Lynn Street and the other projects, I just hid them from myself, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And then the other request I have for council is, if you remember from our last meeting in the memo, I had explained why I would like council to consider using Center Region Code's Housing Board for Appeals, since we have a difficult time getting volunteers for that. Right now we have one person. So I would like council to consider dissolving the Bellefonte Housing Board of Appeals and using Center Region Code for that.
Okay, I'll call for a motion and second to approve dissolving the Bellefonte Housing Board of Appeals and using Center Region Code Administration Housing Board instead. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Dan. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Cleveland.
Clayton, discussions?
Do you think that's the best course of action?
I do, especially with the infrequency that we would use the Housing Appeals Board. Like I said, it's been used once since I've been here almost 2 years now, and I think it's less than one hand how many times it's been used since Center Region Code has taken over codes for the borough, so it's pretty infrequent. It's definitely something Center Region Code can handle should it be needed.
If there's ever some reason to change, we could always reevaluate.
Sure.
Establishing our own committee, but for now,
Right.
this seems to make sense.
And I did reach out to the one individual volunteer that is currently on it and spoke to him about this possibility, and he wasn't slighted. He was okay with it. He also volunteers on several other ABCs, so and he's welcome to volunteer for others, or we can find another board for him if he wants. So.
Is there any fee for us?
No, there are no fees.
There may be an applicant fee.
Oh,
for
I mean
appeal.
for Center Region Code, I don't understand.
No, there's no fees to us, and then
Good.
there are application fees, for the applicant doing the
Do you know
appeal.
who sits on their board?
I don't.
We can get your names.
But we
Good.
can, yeah.
Is one of the folks in Bellefonte doing inspections? I mean, they're familiar with Bellefonte?
I'm not
Well,
sure.
that would be a staff person. They're not board members making decisions for appeals. If I'm answering your question.
Right.
But we can get you board members. This is an appeals board, so the staff person is going to issue something, and then someone wants to appeal that, they would go to this board.
Right, and the way that it works now is if we would have one, Mr. Snyder would be here kind of representing code in the borough to the appeal, to the board. So that is the staff person that is familiar with the inspections and the situation. So he would be making the case, and then the board would make that determination.
So maybe I can help Gina a little bit here. It's an adjudication issue. The appeals board is totally separate from the code administration office. The people who are on the appeals board have nothing to do directly with the people who do the investigations. They are sort of like the judge when you go to court. So, and they would make those decisions independent of what the code enforcement says. It's actually part of the state law that these two issues have to be held entirely separately. It's independent people.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of dissolving the Bellefonte Housing Board of Appeals and using Center Region Code Administration's Housing Board in its place, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Great. And then again, I just wanted to mention, I did put in my memo, if you have any questions from the MPO 2019 workshop and the updates that I did, or any of the items that might have been referenced to it, I do have additional supplemental materials that I could provide, but it could be its own council packet, so I wasn't going to put everything in there, but I can send you any information, statistics that you might be interested in, so.
We have that as an action item.
But that's coming up later.
So this fall under zoning then?
No, it's more, it was a council plan comments that were done in 19, now updated here now, and they'll go in part of that update of that long-range plan, the 20 to 30-year plan.
Okay. I don't know if I read that as a plan, because some of the comments I thought weren't necessary.
Well, that, if you want to, I don't know when our deadline is to.
I don't know when the MPO needs them exactly.
They're just March. She said March. We comment till March 23.
Okay.
Is what I thought she said.
Right. That was the point of putting them in red and having you guys read them over the weekend and the work session to make any comments that you had, or suggestions about eliminating something that might have been there that you didn't agree with as a priority, or those sorts of things. I was just tasked with updating that. Not tasked, I volunteered to do it, but from the Nittany Valley Joint Planning Commission meeting. And I've been heavily involved in active transportation study or conversations over the past year and a half. So
would this be something that would fit into the Nittany Valley realm with the group?
Well, yes, but in 2019, the MPO came specifically just to get Bellefonte projects. So that's what that workshop document was. And Anne requested that it be updated. She just said this is 3 years ago now, almost 4. So are there things on this that aren't relevant or are still relevant and important to the borough?
I think she touched on some things weren't relevant or didn't fit into a long-range plan. It might be worth maybe spending a couple minutes in a work session, looking over it a couple more times.
Okay.
And then getting comments back, because it sounds like it's going to, now I suppose they updated every 3 or 4 years, so it's not like the end of the world.
Right.
Yeah, and Anne, she knows. She's met with Jenny Lynn Schuster and Catherine Spielvogel and I separately and discussed various projects, and they're planning to also kind of talk to council a little bit about stuff that they've been working on coming up in the new year. And so these conversations are ongoing, but certainly if you guys want to not submit this right away and you want to edit things,
I want to make sure.
Control here.
I want to make sure it's council's plan.
Well, right.
'Cause that's who's sitting at the table.
Yes.
So council should make the decision.
Sure. That is why I put it in red. I used the red color.
Yeah.
so that you could see what was
Yeah.
added, so you could say, Ms. Thompson, I don't want that there. So you can say that red line, I would like you to delete that.
I think we gotta have a work session, make sure it's
Yeah,
assigned.
I was sort of surprised that you guys got together with Hugh Mose
Well-
and me as MPO wasn't involved at all.
You were
And Nittany
welcome.
Valley- Well, I didn't know anything about it, number
Okay.
one. And number two, this is part of the Nittany Valley planning process. It's not only Bellefonte.
Sure.
So these recommendations should go to Nittany Valley Planning, then approach
Sure,
at the
they,
same time the Bellefonte Borough, because we're part of the Nittany Valley Planning
I
organization.
understand that,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, but when the MPO came to Borough Council in 2019, they came just to get the Bellefonte version of the Nittany Valley Joint Planning Commission's
Right.
project
And at the Nittany
priorities.
Valley Planning, they asked if you would, we all asked that you would take a look at that.
Right, but it was just the Bellefonte,
That's correct.
right. So
And
she
then
just
all of a
handed
sudden,
that to
it
me
turns
at
in-
the meeting and
It's turned into
said,
more than correcting what was existing.
sure, you guys can edit that as you please.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll just add that to a
Yeah.
work session here in the future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On, it says, Ms. Thompson asked for clarification and feedback on business sign approvals. Feedback included that Harb would like to continue to see the signs for approval, and signs should not be approved generally as administrative approvals. Has there been a problem with that?
Not a problem, that's not the correct word, it's just that, 99.5% of the time, business signs are pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, Harb's not gonna really nitpick about branding and that kind of thing. There could be issues with how signs are mounted to the building, and so I guess for that reason, maybe Harb would like to continue seeing them, or I wanted clarification from Harb on whether I
Yeah.
could administratively approved, and
Have you been doing that in the past?
I have administratively approved a couple because those were the only things that would have been on an agenda to meet about. And so I reached out to the Harb president, Sam McKinley, and said, do you think it's okay, you know, given this, like, that these would be able to be administratively approved? And so
Again, they're an advisory board,
Mhm.
and council makes those decisions. And if, some of those things I can, to speed the process for the business owner, I think administratively, they should still be able to be approved by Gina with her experience, and probably with conversations with you and
Well,
others.
we could make that a policy or whatever, some leeway. for
Right, well,
The staff.
but
So-
she's just looking for guidance,
Yes.
and I'm making the comment, do you really need that? What do you
Yeah,
I
feel,
would-
just a minute,
I
Joanne.
would like to-
Just a minute, Joanne. What do you feel comfortable doing?
I think that once we have better and updated design guidelines in place, I would feel more comfortable with what I could administratively approve and what I can't.
Okay.
Most Harbs do have those very clear guidelines. We don't. I have administratively approved, actually, how you can see in your minutes,
Yeah.
stuff that was not well received by Harb, and there was pushback on that. There have been probably quite a few projects that I could have just administratively approved, but because at the time of my inexperience, I didn't
Yeah.
know whether I should or not. And this is an example of that. I'm not, I've done business signs, just so many of them now over the past year and a half, that I feel like they can probably be safely administratively approved. But Harb, if they want to review them, then that's their.
Well, what I don't want to happen is a business owner has to wait 3 weeks before they get an
Right.
approval for a sign that you feel very comfortable approving
Right.
administratively.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to withdraw that ability for you to do that
Mhm.
by this suggestion from
Right.
Harb.
We also do have, because of our updated sign ordinance, we do have design, visual design guidelines that go with that. So that also, I think, helps me feel comfortable and confident with doing those administrative approvals, because we have that design guide manual specifically for signage in the borough.
Okay.
So,
Well, what I would say to you is if you feel very comfortable administratively approving it,
Mhm.
I will back what you say.
Okay.
So if you see something that looks okay to you
Mhm.
and meets all the criteria and you okay it, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So that's my
So-
comment to that.
So my follow-up was sort of halfway between both of you. Gina is right in that there are a few sign issues, and there are not many, that are questionable. I can remember one earlier this year that wanted to have an illuminated sign, which obviously violates the ordinance. She did bring that one to CARB, and they said that that could not be done because of the ordinance, and they worked with the business owner, and as a result, they did change the sign. There are a few cases like that. In addition, what Gina said about needing the guidance for the hard things, I think is critical so that some of the concerns and pushback that we've had from residents will, once they see those guidelines, it'll make it much easier for her to make that decision as to when administrative approvals are okay and when she's not quite sure and it really should be going to HARB. I think it's sort of between saying she can do everything and she can do nothing. It's kind of like in the middle.
I would trust my own discretion to know whether I should take
Yeah, I
a
do
sign.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's pretty clear what
yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Gina.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Thank you, Gina.
It's like having a coffee.
Okay, so we have reports in the packet. Are there any questions about the reports?
We can skip the borough manager.
If there's any
Oh,
questions,
yeah.
if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Yeah, I have two.
Okay.
One is just a quick reminder, the second is a question. Just wanted to remind us that the new signage for the new municipal building that you mentioned in your report, it will need to go through the HARB review process, since we've just talked about signs.
I'm aware of
The
that.
other one, and in that case, I think only because could be considered a conflict of interest for Gina to administratively approve something that the borough is actually doing. Having it go through the HARB council may be a clearer presentation to the community than otherwise. Just a thought. The other one is, can you give us some more details on Highlands Community College plans for adding a campus here in Bellefonte?
Well-
You did say that they were thinking of the WISE, but there was no timeline or anything like that. Do you have any more information?
I don't at this point in time. I met them about a month ago out at the former Weiss store property. That is their number one place in Bellefonte, location next to the high school. I think close to I-99, close to in town here, but accessible to the high school. Also close to, our Votech school here in the area. So there's a lot of pluses that they like that site. But they were having difficulty getting in to look at the facility, and I did assist with that, getting in touch with some of the people that work for Weiss, got them in at that point in time, welcomed them when they were here, and I have not heard anything since then. I'm assuming they're looking at terms and those kinds of things. Previously, they said the earliest they would start would be the spring, late spring of 2023, and they could even start, sometime maybe even in 2024. So that I will check in with them to see if they have any definitive idea of timeline, since we spoke. So I'll try to have that maybe by my next report. But I think no news is good news. They were moving forward. They really like this location. They did bring somebody in from the Altoona location that was there that day. And the people that we met with here in this room a couple of months ago were there and expressed again how much they would like to come to Bellefonte. So it all sounds very positive.
Now, isn't there somebody in the old Weiss building?
Yes, but there is some vacant space.
There is.
There's Mount Nittany, then there's a long bricks covered storefront space. And there's a set of metal doors. They probably would put some windows back
It's
in.
still a drugstore.
Well, they did look at the drugstore space, but between the drugstore, which is Eckert's, and where Mount Nittany is, there's a long vacant space. That's what they looked at. So I don't, they gave us some rough numbers of what they needed, about 6,000 square feet is what they were looking to need to get started. So they were looking at that space. So it sounds very positive at this point. But I'll try to see if there's any more definitive terms or particulars.
No news is good news, probably.
I think so.
All right, moving on. I want to make a correction that workplace safety should have had a report submitted, but it's not
Okay.
showing on here.
All right, we'll check on that.
Any other questions on administrative
Before we
reports?
go too far, Dawn wanted to show a
I
video.
have that, that's coming up.
So make sure.
That's coming up. So, any other questions on the reports? Dawn, you want to fire up that video?
You said a couple of comments
Rolling,
here.
Dawn.
Action.
The Bellefonte Fire Department is a very special place to be a member. We have a lot of people who are very caring. They care about their community. They're willing to put the time in to do the training and realize the value of doing the training and know that being the best that we can be at what we do saves lives.
It gives me a purpose for my life because nobody ever knows when they're going to have an accident. So it's kind of just makes you feel better in life that you know people are out there that are always there to help you. It makes me feel better that I can be one of those people.
We are a 100% volunteer fire company.
We're all here for the betterment of the community and the safety of the residents in this area. There's a lot of good outcome comes out of helping the community and the people in their bad time of need. There's a lot of good feeling when you get home and say, I helped them on their worst times.
I like being a firefighter because it's challenging. Every call is different, and you learn something different every time.
The skills that I've learned being a firefighter are so much more than I ever even thought of. I grew up on a farm, and I've never used a chainsaw, which you wouldn't think of.
This department does some pretty cool stuff. That's all I have to say, is like, there's a lot of people that are like, oh man, I don't know what to do with my life, come do this. That's gonna be the most awesome thing you've ever done in your life.
The fire department is a family, and it's the brother sisterhood that's growing, that's very strong.
They will help you out with anything. They will be there for you, and they will never let you fail.
They're supportive. They've always supported me with what I wanted to do. They've always been very educational and helped me out with everything that I've needed.
You know, I didn't really have a lot of background growing up in the fire department, so I was a little bit nervous, but I would just say anybody that's interested, like, don't let that hold you back, because there's different opportunities for anybody. So just really give it a shot if it's something that you've been interested in, because no one in the fire department wants you to fail. They all want you to succeed because we need the volunteers and we need people helping in the community.
There's always a lot of jobs in the fire company. I'm what they call a social member. Our social members are helping out with working in the kitchen to do meals, fundraising. We do anything else that can be done around without necessarily needing to run into burning buildings or ride big fire engines.
I encourage anyone to come be a part of the Bellefonte Fire Department if you want to help. You don't have to be this big old firefighter, you can just be behind the scenes and it helps.
There's always something to do, even if it's just controlling traffic for the safety of the firemen that's out fighting the fire on the scene. Anything simple as help us cleaning up the station, there's a job for everybody.
You could be a social member, you could be a driver, you could be an exterior firefighter, you could do an interior firefighter, you could do a combination of all of them.
There's a place for everyone in the fire service.
We run as one. Join us today.
Just a couple comments I wanted to share with council. The borough received a $500,000 SAFER grant few years ago, and I think we're probably in the third year of it. It was maybe even during COVID, so we might be even entering the fourth year. Nick Caputo, we hired him as a consultant to administer this program. A lot of it's marketing, but it was really to attract new volunteer firefighters into the fire department. The video that you just saw is one of 4 videos that recently was completed that he had done. There'll be other marketing things that you'll probably see, some billboards that will soon be going up shortly. So Randy's been sitting in on this. We meet with Nick about once a month just to get updates on the grant, and because this is going to start being viewed and maybe aired on television and things like that, I wanted to just show council what was going on with that grant in regard to the fire department, because we thought that was pretty well done.
Very nice.
Sometime in January, you're watching TV and somebody familiar pops up on the screen. That's why.
Very nice.
But yeah, I think it sounds like things are going pretty well with that program. I think there are some new members coming in from all this.
Very good.
Okay, well, moving on to current and old business.
Do you want me to do some of that?
Sure, go ahead.
First item is this request to close Dunlap Street in front of the Gamble Mill. We did, Gina did check with the applicant and got some additional information. It's in a separate memo. Hopefully you saw that in your materials, but we're just simply looking for approval because the nearby restaurants are closed on Sundays when these events would take place.
So I'll call for a motion and second to approve closing Dunlop Street for the Smith and Front pop-up event in 2023. This will be held on Sundays, May 28th, Sunday, June 25th, Sunday, July 30th, Sunday, July 27th, and Sunday, September 24th is still being decided on. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Kent Bernier, second. Discussion?
Thanks, Gina, for getting all that information for us. Appreciate it.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the closing of Dunlap Street for the Smith and Front pop-up event in 2023, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Next item is the Bellefonte Borough Authority at their meeting on the 13th approved a recommendation to Borough Council to reappoint Doug Johnson to the authority. We know that appointments to authority boards and commissions are done at the first meeting in January. So we're just letting you know that happened, but we're saying that should be on the meeting in January, whatever date that is, the 1st and 3rd, thank you. So no action for this evening. Similarly, the authority approved a recommendation to council to appoint Randy Bragbill as the primary and primary delegate, and Doug Johnson as the alternate delegate to the Spring Creek Watershed Commission effective January 1st, 2023. This is part of the agreement between the authority and the council. We think this could be acted on, so you want to take care of that.
I'll call for a motion and second to approve Randy Brockville as delegate and Doug Johnson as alternate delegate to the Spring Creek Watershed Commission effective January 1st, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Dan, do I have a second?
Second, Sedgwick.
Sedgwick. Questions?
Point of order. If there is a state policy that we don't do any ABCs until January, why are we doing this evening?
This is
Because the Spring Creek Watershed Commission does not meet until the 3rd week of January, so there is no difference between waiting until January to meet the state law than doing it this evening.
Well, this is part of an agreement between the authority and council. It's up to you guys. But we were fulfilling the agreement that you agreed to.
I see no reason not to do this.
I mean, is this just the council approving their selection, and then this January gets finalized, the
No,
first
we-
meeting, or just finalized?
It's based on the agreement that the authority would make recommendations to Borough Council, and Borough Council would
But the
approve
date,
them.
the date is effective in January. The Spring Creek Watershed Commission doesn't meet till the third week. So holding off to meet the state law, I don't see as a problem.
I'm
And I do know,
I was simply listing it on the agenda as an action item based on the agreement.
So-
It's up to
so
council.
I move to table this until January 1st to meet the state guidelines.
Okay, do I have a second to the table? I have no second, Joanne, so we'll have to move on with the main motion. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the appointments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I, only because of my motion related to the state law.
Gotcha.
The next item is our meeting schedule. Hopefully, we'd like to advertise it, obviously, before the January meetings. We did check from the last council meeting. Somebody had asked about our Monday, July 3rd meeting going to Wednesday the 5th, because obviously we're off on the 4th, and we had to check to see if CNET was available. CNET is available. I told them to pencil us in on the 5th, which means that our authority would move to the 6th. They're okay with that. So that's really the change, if you're good with that. We move the council meeting on the 3rd to the 5th. I think everything else was explained at the last meeting. Any, unusual date changes or new holidays or whatever, we explained those at the last meeting.
Okay, do we need to approve the change first?
I think so. Approve this meeting schedule, then we'll go ahead and advertise it.
Okay, so a call for a motion and second to approve the revision of the schedule. What was those dates again?
July 3rd to the 5th.
July 3rd and to the 5th.
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
That was Dan and Johnson.
And Doug Johnson. Discussion? All those in favor of changing the dates in July from the 3rd to the 5th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. So I'll call for a motion to approve the 2023 council meeting schedule. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it,
Motion
Johnson.
Dan, second Johnson. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve the 2023 council meeting schedule signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries.
Next item is our 2023 borough budget. Looking for a motion to approve that.
Do we have
So
a
moved.
motion and a second? We have a motion by Joanne. Do we have a
Second.
second? Dan? I'm running out of space on my paper. Discussion. Are there any amendments to the 2023 budget? I would like to request two changes, and I let this up to council. The first one is to, in the general fund, overtime wages was being increased from $42,000 to $62,250. I would like to see us cut that a little bit to cut $15,250 from that $62,250.
Got 15,250.
And the other, well, let's go with that one. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Johnson, Dan. Discussion?
Which line item is that?
410, 180.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And the next item I had, again, we had talked about in the past, is to remove Bellefonte from the Pennsylvania Municipal League to reduce cost and duplication of services. Do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Motion by Dan, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Grenier? Discussion?
I have my same objection that I have had all along. They provide a good deal of additional training beyond what PSAB does. We have a greater network of people to plan, and we also have the leadership here on Bellefonte with the PML. I think we will be losing a lot if we do this.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of leaving the PML signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye,
So we have one nay.
strongly.
Yep.
Can you give us the line item on that, Randy? Do you have it?
No, I don't have that one.
But we'll have to wait for that.
I know, but I,
Maybe I can find it for you.
wanted it for the record.
We can ask for it.
Okay. Next item is a motion and a second to approve the related tax ordinance resolution. Do I have a motion?
Wait a minute, we did not have a motion to accept the budget, just the two changes.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Are there any other changes? Okay, then I'll call for a motion and second to approve the 2023 budget for the Bellefonte Borough as amended. All those, is that right? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Reluctantly, aye.
Motion carries. Now I'll call for a motion and second to approve the related tax ordinance resolution. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Clayton.
Clayton, second.
I'll second.
Dan. Discussion?
Who was it that seconded? I didn't hear.
Barb, Dan.
Okay. I have a question. I'm not sure this goes to the budget or to the tax ordinance. Since we've removed these two items, the general budget is now out of balance. How is that going to affect the tax ordinance?
Well, it's,
Because we reduced the expenses, and therefore we should be also reducing the money required by the property taxes.
to answer your question, we're not proposing a tax increase. So I mean, there may be a little bit of overage, but that would be acceptable for reserves. And of course, Lori's going to balance revenues with expenses accordingly. And all it is it's a spending plan. What it means is we might have a little bit of a cushion, in one of the other categories of the general fund. If everything stayed the same, we weren't over in any category, but, over a $14 million budget, having $14,000, $15,000 as a fluctuating number is not a bad thing.
Yeah, I see it this way. I mean, right now, we're anticipating using 77,000 in reserves. Now we're just using 60.
Yes.
There's no change, really. We're just using less in reserves.
Yes.
To balance the budget.
Okay. That answered my question.
Any other questions? All those in favor to approve the related tax ordinance resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I have a backup question. Would the PML fees be included in membership dues?
We're
not signing up for PML again, and we backed that out, would that line item be the membership dues under council expense?
It should have probably been about 1,700 if that's the number.
Well, this is membership dues and subscriptions, so it includes other things besides.
Yeah, Lori's
it's
going to
not-
take a look at that, but I think.
It's not a single line item.
Then it would be all of it.
Okay, so it's included in there somewhere.
Probably,
Okay.
we can verify with Lori where that was.
What line item number is that, Deb?
400.420
400?
under council expenses.
420. 400.420. Did you get that, Dawn? Okay.
That's the only one that makes,
Yeah.
it seems like
I was looking for it.
an
I couldn't find it.
all-inclusive rather than a specific line item.
Randy, I'd like that. Joanne, could I have clarification for my notes here, because there's sometimes a delay when you're addressing the vote. So are you a nay for both motions, or were you a yes?
I was yay for the ordinance, tax ordinance. And a reluctant yes on the borough budget.
Okay, thank you.
I'm really not happy with it.
I just needed clarification. Thank you.
So we're done?
I think we made a mistake.
I think we're done. Okay.
I think mistake.
Moving on to special event application fees.
I put a memo in the packets regarding these fees. We talked about them off and on. I'm just suggesting the application fee be changed a little bit, and then a paragraph put in about collecting our fees for special events.
I'll call for a motion and second to approve changes to fee schedule as recommended. Will this be something that?
Well, there's no, Randy, this is just the special event. This isn't the full schedule fee.
No, this is just for the special event application.
Yeah, there's,
Right.
I would like, if appropriate, I would like council to adopt that paragraph that I highlighted in the memo. Because that's what other boroughs did. They basically say, we're gonna try to capture our reasonable costs associated with a special event. So the only thing they list is the application fee, and then depending on the special event, you know, what everybody needs, they would get an estimate, and then, of course, that would be the cost that they would pay if they want to go forward. So a lot of places, and now the fees are already set. Like, if somebody wants to rent a piece of equipment or whatever, we have a fee schedule for that. Lori already does. So if there was some question of renting something that the borough had, or an officer salary, well, it depends on the officer and so on. So we'd have to figure those numbers out and present a budget to the applicant. And that's what these other places do. It's all based on costs. I don't think you can adopt an exact rate schedule, but you can put language in that you're going to make a reasonable attempt to get your costs back. And that's what these other places did.
Okay, any other questions?
So all we're doing now.
We still need a motion.
Yeah, I know.
In a second.
So I'll call for a motion and second to approve the fee schedule changes for the special event application fees.
I'll make that motion.
Dan, and a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
Yes. I propose removing the waivers for special events in the parks offered to the Bellefonte-based nonprofit organizations. It's not a big cost to us. If you look at the annual summary of the overall budget versus actual revenue and expenses for both the general and the park budgets, we are bringing in more money than removing this waiver would warrant. In 2022, we have received between 105 and 111.3% of the budgeted revenue, while expending only between 90.5 and 98.8% of the general fund. Similarly, we have received between 94 and 102% of budgeted revenue, while only spending 98 to 109% of the Parks and Rec Fund. The lower number is through November, while the higher percentage assumes the same activity level as the rest of the year for December. The nonprofit waivers only apply to park reservations. Yes, the expenses are close to what we budgeted for this year, but I do not see any reason to remove the waivers since park rentals in December, due to possible wintry weather issues, would put us over the expected revenues in the park budget, which mostly come in the second quarter of the year. Chopping off these waivers is reducing the goodwill we have created for all the good work that our community nonprofits do for us. And when you look at our general budget, it appears that we have more than enough goodwill funds to cover these nonprofit events. Then, in terms of the general budget for sustainability and the economic vitality of the community, part of our plan for going forward and creating our budgets, I'd suggest we gather the data on the actual cost to the Bureau for special community events held outside the parks by nonprofits before hitting them with a new fee that they may not be able to afford. I think this is something that's going a little bit too fast for our nonprofits. If we want to maintain the goodwill and the sustainability of our these kinds of events, I think we need to do this in a better review process.
I would just add that your strategic management plan said you were to try to increase revenues. The Parks Fund is supported by a real estate tax, so whatever costs that are not picked up by an applicant fall back to the taxpayer.
But we haven't had this discussion with the nonprofits, nor have we looked at the actual cost. So I think this is a bit too soon, too quick.
I'm just, you know, if you don't, that's up to council. You want to try some period of time before you institute. I'm just telling you what was in the strategic plan, and we're trying to capture revenue that otherwise goes to the taxpayers to pick up the cost. I looked at multiple boroughs in Pennsylvania. I didn't see waivers. I didn't see anybody doing what we do for free. I mean, there's a lot of nonprofits that fit into that category, and a lot of them are making a lot of money, and we're paying the expense of helping us set up with electricity, barricades, you name it, to make an event happen. And all that is eaten by the taxpayer and not the applicant. So maybe you want to look at it, study it, but it falls back to the taxpayers to pay for it, to absorb it. And another point I'd like to make is, since the waterfront walkway opened, we have not had paid staff or seasonal staff clean the walkway because it's not in the budget. And you know, so when January, we set the budget, and when January, a normal year, now it's earlier this year, snow comes, it looks terrible over there. And you know, it's because we don't have seasonal help in the budget. So there are shortfalls in the budget. We have a volunteer that comes in on the weekends and opens up and cleans up the bathrooms. He's a paid employee, but he does it by a volunteer effort. And that's how we squeak by, you know, the last part of the year, getting the restrooms open, like for Victorian Christmas and stuff. The seasonal help is gone by then, but because we have a volunteer guy that comes in, we manage to get by. I don't think we're appropriately funded, is what I'm trying to say. And we're trying to increase revenues where there's shortfalls, which is out of the strategic plan that we all said we would try to follow. But it's up to council.
And I like, so the special event application, that paragraph, I think does help with what we're trying to accomplish, recouping some of those fees. I just think about the Talleyrand, so the park reservation, that $200 fee. I'm thinking about BHCA and how many concerts in the park they have in the summer, what fee they're going to incur for that. they said like the Boy Scout troop, if they wanted to do a recruiting event, they don't really have an extra $200 to put towards something like that. So maybe the smaller organizations, so I'm not quite sure how I feel about that $200 fee for using the park. But again, not opposed to saying, well, can you pay an extra $50 for trash to be emptied or an extra bit for restrooms to be cleaned? I think they would be receptive to that. I'm trying to think about these smaller groups who want to use it also, but that might not have the funds to do that. But yeah, the special events, definitely, we need to recoup some of that.
I think we could keep track of the costs. I can just think of Victorian Christmas weekend, but we received emails about the Winter Market Fest in Talleyrand Park, and we got an email asking about special garbage collection, who was going to do it. Now, I suppose we could send somebody in at overtime rates and have the trash cans emptied, but that's the kind of thing that, taxpayers are gonna pay for, or the applicant's gonna pay for. But I'm willing to track it and keep, let you see the numbers, maybe 2023 and see what we're looking at and then maybe adjust it some different way, but I think it needs to be looked at.
I'll put it, well, it makes sense to be a little flexible with the fees.
Sure.
Where maybe we drill that down a little bit more as to who we're giving the waivers to.
Yeah, that could be.
How they qualify.
Yeah.
But then you're still going to be able to provide some revenue through the borough staff and what they're doing.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can look at maybe what some other communities have done, but we could come back with some further reviews and bring that back to you in a work session.
Because it's a fee, so it could be changed at any time.
Yes,
So we
yes.
could approve this.
Yes.
And work with it
Yes.
while you're doing your review and then
Yep.
come back. But that would be at least taking the waivers off
Yes.
for now. But still, I think drill down and make sure that we're giving waivers to the proper entities.
Yes.
So let me ask for clarification on what we're voting. Are you saying that we need to divide the motion between the waivers and the reasonable fees? And then we look back at the waivers again in January? Is that what you're saying?
No, we would take the, I want to say that, we would take the waiver, we would keep the waiver for the nonprofits.
We just leave that alone.
Just leave that alone, yeah.
And only act on the special event fees for now.
Okay, so that is a divide the question. So I make a motion to divide the question so that those two are separate votes.
We're not going to vote on the nonprofit, Joanne.
Now, what that means is that because the motion was for both of them, you need to divide the question so that we're only voting on the special fees. And then the waivers, we will be tabling until a future date.
I think we do.
But right now, the way the motion was ready, you have to vote for both of them or neither of them.
Then can I call for an amendment to leave the waivers in the,
That's basically what I just did. Dividing the question says we will only be voting on the first half, not the waiver half.
okay, I'm trying to make it easy and it sounds more difficult now. We don't want to do away with the waiver, we want to keep the waivers. So the amendment, if I made an amendment, it would be, or have an amendment, it would be to leave the waivers with this. I mean, it's a motion, whatever you want to do. Let's just get it done.
Amend it to keep the waivers and vote on the other part of the original motion.
Okay, do I have a motion to amend to keep the waivers and use the borough information for the revenue?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Clayton. We have a second?
Second, Sedgwick.
Sedgwick.
Okay, so any discussion on leaving the waiver in?
I think, like Ralph said, going along with our strategic plan, that goes along with that. And also, I don't like the idea of passing it on to our taxpayers. I think that this is really important. I'm not to say that there are not exceptions to these rules, but I do think they should be the exceptions instead of having the waivers.
Rather than a complete waiver, why not just a reduced rate for nonprofits?
Well, I think it would depend. I mean, we incur fees every time there is an event. And I think it's important that we're cognizant of that, whether they're nonprofits or not. I'm totally in support of nonprofits, but I think at the same time, we have a responsibility to our residents.
But too, if
That's why-
they leave the trash cans overflowing, then you keep that $100 deposit. So they still have to pay that $100 deposit. And if you have to send somebody in there to clean up after them, then you most definitely keep that.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And that's what it sounds like. Either all nonprofits get a waiver, or they have to pay whatever the fee is, $200, say. Why not offer it to them for $100, or, come up with a fee that reduces it for them, but we're still bringing in some revenue?
Any other discussion? Okay, we're going to vote on the amendment to keep the waivers. So yes, if you agree, and no, if you do not. Do we want to do a roll call style?
I can.
Would you say that again, please?
The amendment is to keep the waivers in,
Waiving the fees.
waiving the fees, is to leave that in.
Kind of as we've been
But
doing.
only
right?
waiving the reservation fee, but not the application fee and not the deposit.
Correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's just,
We leave it as is, like we've been doing for a couple of years or more.
I'm sorry.
Don't feel Barbara bad.
But would you please
Just-
help me
yeah.
again, please?
if you say yeah, if you vote yes, you're voting to leave the waivers alone, not going to touch
Okay.
it.
If we vote yes,
If you vote yes. If you
Okay.
vote no, then
then you want the waive,
you want the waivers to go
to go
away.
away. Okay, thank you.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Bragdale.
Yes.
Miss Cleaton.
Yes.
Miss Dan.
No.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Miss McKean.
Everyone froze. Could you clarify again what the vote is? I didn't catch it because,
If we're leaving the waivers in, the amendment is to leave the waivers alone. We're not going to touch them. We're going to leave them there.
you're frozen again. You're frozen again. We're voting to leave the waivers in.
Yes.
A yes vote is to leave them in. A no vote is to take them out.
Okay, no.
Miss Purnell is excused. So, Miss Sedgwick.
Yes.
Miss Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
The yeses have it. 1, 2, 3,
Two
4,
noes.
5, 6 yeses and 2 noes. Yes.
Okay.
You can put another motion on the table to reduce that fee.
No,
While
Well,
we're discussing.
we can come back, figure out a number and
Okay.
research.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
so-
that's fine. Yes, thank you.
So,
I do. The Rams.
so now we'll have a motion to, we still have to approve this next
Yes,
part.
yeah,
right? So we have a motion to approve the changes to the fee schedule as recommended, leaving the waivers in place. Same thing.
Okay.
So I have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I think your motion
Oh,
is
we already
already
have the, I'm sorry, yeah, we got,
Dan and Bernier
I've got like 10 names on there.
Okay, so we have the motion by Dan and Kent. So the motion now as amended, to approve the changes of the fee schedule as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. The motion carries.
If I could just say, I think that, I kind of like that because, going back to what Joanna said, I wanted to go back. BHCA, they're probably one, they get a waiver. So and they don't make hardly any money on
Right,
those Sunday
right,
concerts.
right.
However, there are times where they call and they need an electrician because something isn't working, and we have to call somebody in. And that, to get reimbursed for that is all we would be really asking for, you know?
Yeah.
So they still don't pay their waiver, but they pay for something that,
If something happens.
yeah, that's all I wanted to
I
say.
think that's
Yeah,
great.
but
Thanks, Dawn.
we'll research and come back or put some numbers down.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is the 2023 Bellefonte Borough fee schedule. I'd like to call for a motion to table this until the next meeting in January, because we have not discussed anything on the fee schedule at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it has like the utility fees, the refuse, and all of that. Those ones we did. Now, the authority already set the water and sewer, so they're in the fee schedule.
Refuse is in the fee.
Refuse is there. There was a couple cleanup works, but you could probably, slide by till the beginning of January.
Okay, so do I have a motion to table?
I make that motion.
I'll second that.
Again, we're going to issue the utility bills according to the authority, because they set the rates.
Yeah.
And refuse the same. But if you want to clean up the fee schedule in January, I think that would be okay.
Okay. I think we've done it in January before.
And we usually do it this meeting.
Yeah, we usually do it this meeting.
Again,
'cause-
we never discussed it, so.
That was Dan who made the motion and Johnson second.
Okay, moving on to the 1-hour parking fee in red spaces, there's a motion and second I need a motion and second.
Point of order, you didn't vote on the table motion.
Okay, do we have a motion? Have the motions
You have a motion by Dan and a
by
second.
Dan and Johnson. All those in favor to table the motion, or to table the 2023 Bellefonte Borough fee schedule, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. It carries. So we go next to the 1-hour parking fee in red spaces. I'll call for a motion and second to approve the removal of the 1-hour free parking in red parking spaces. I'll let Dawn give you kind of a heads up on that one.
We need a motion first, don't we? or-
I'll make the motion.
Yes.
Second.
We brought this up a couple months ago. Again, we had a letter from a person that purchases one of the commuter parking spaces, pays money every month. With the way our enforcement officials have already said to us, they pretty much work for no more than usually 4 or 5 hour shifts at the most, so they don't make it around. It almost makes this, unattainable that they cannot enforce this 1-hour free parking. And we don't see it as fair to the people that are paying. We put something in your packet tonight to give you an idea of the revenue generated on all the municipal lots and whether it's the commuter space or the residential commuter space, whatever it may be. But we are looking, the way the staff sees it, when Borough Council made the parking meters in town, basically all 15-minute parking, we don't see the issue with people using the library or the post office and paying a quarter for their 15 minutes while these other people are paying, 10 or 15, 20 or $25 a month for a parking space. We'd like to see us be able to enforce that to the, just be able to enforce it.
Thank you.
I probably don't need to say this, but there was, just as Dawn said, the red meters were, the 1 hour was specifically for around the post office and the library for people to run in, run out real quick. But as Dawn said, all meters are 15-minute meters. You put a quarter in, you get 15 minutes to run in. So, that solved the problem. I mean, if in effect, for a quarter you can run in, or if you want to stay longer, you stay longer. But we solved the problem by allowing coins to be put in these meters, and you can feed them all much. You stay longer than that, up to 2 hours. But if you're just going to run in somewhere, stick a coin in the meter and be done with it. So that was really why it went for 10 hour to start with. But I believe we did solve that problem.
Any other discussion?
How will we notify that these are no longer 1 hour spots?
Probably what we would do, Joanne, is tell the enforcement officers as January 1st, once it becomes effective, they'll just put notices and, kind of warnings for maybe up to 2 months, to make the adjustment period.
If there's any signage changes, which we'll need some, we'll get that in.
We'll have to do that as well.
Yeah.
How many red parking spaces do we have?
Off the top of my head, and I'm guessing, but I think it's 105, 106.
Okay, thank you.
Related to those questions, you said that the original reason for doing this was to give time for people to go into the library and the post office. Is there a possibility to put 15-minute meters in a couple of those red parking spaces so that still continues, or is that something we should consider later?
What we did, Joanne, and this was council's request early last year, is we went back in and made the adjustment that you can purchase a day pass for $5. So if if a resident or someone comes into town and they're going to spend a few hours in the library, they can use their phone and purchase a day pass.
Okay. So that needs to be advertised on our website more prominently so that people know that we're going to make this change.
We can do that.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Real quick, is there any chance of adding more meters? I mean, if we have 105 red spaces, say we're doing 60% selling.
We're selling, if you looked at that chart, Doug, I think we're selling about 80 to 85
Okay,
a
then
month.
that's a real reasonable buffer there.
The
Thanks.
idea was that's on the outskirts.
Yeah, good.
And people that wanted to park all day could park there.
Thanks for
And
answering my
it's
question.
residential, in the residential area, it's doing really
Okay.
well.
Great, thank you.
Any other?
I think it'll make it easier for them to enforce.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they enforce that by license number, is that correct?
Yes.
There's nothing hanging, okay.
Yeah, I could give an example. There's one area where he did, finally get around to seeing, and they were there parked more than an hour, and there were 6 different vehicles. And as he went back and looked, they had purchased permits, but it was up. The last time that they purchased it was in April of 2021. So they went from April 2021 until now, parked there every day, and until he ended up, one of our enforcement officers was able to
justify,
catch it, so.
Great, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the removal of the 1 hour free parking in the red parking spaces signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Motion carries. Let's see, the Borough office closed on Friday, December 23rd in observance of Christmas Eve, and Monday, December 26th in observance of Christmas Day. There will be no refuse collection on Friday or Monday. Refuse will be collected on Wednesday, December 21st, 2022, for Friday, and Wednesday, December 28th, 2022, for Monday. And there's no action required.
Question, what about New Year's? Does this fall it's a Monday holiday for New Year's as well?
Yep, and that's coming
Same
right
thing
up.
goes-
That's my next, is Borough office.
Okay.
Borough office closed Monday, January 2nd, 2023, in observance of New Year's Day. Refuse will not be collected on Monday. Refuse will be collected on Wednesday, January 4th, 2023. And no action required. Okay. Moving into new business.
Just one real quick old
There
business.
always is.
I just wanted to remind everybody that the comments, written comments, emails for the short-term rental draft ordinance were due today. So we will be gathering, compiling all comments that came in, and we think the easiest way is to post everything on our website so everybody can see it, and we'll give you a direct link or a link, and hopefully by the end of tomorrow we should have everything posted on the website.
Could they put that on, what's that called?
Well, it's all it is like a PDF of any email. We're just going to copy. It might be in a couple different groups because we have a cap on emails or PDF size, so it might have to be a couple groups. But there's simply a big PDF with all the comments that came in. We printed them, put them in a package, and posted them.
Okay.
So,
Will these will be available to the public?
yes, it'll be available on the website.
Okay,
So
to everybody.
people want to download them, look at them, they can do that.
Could they be organized, pro and con, make it easier going through them?
I think you'll be able to tell that from reading it.
I don't want to take the chance of missing.
Just put 'em on there, Ralph.
Somebody, you know,
Just put them on there.
Okay.
somebody might be partially for and partially against. I don't know.
Okay, so they'll go on the website.
Yes.
Now, I would say if someone doesn't have access to, the internet and they want a copy, they can obviously call us and get it.
Or come in and look through, we can print off a copy for
Will
review.
people's names be on those also?
Probably.
Okay,
Yeah. I
okay.
assume because it's public information.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Can we
That's-
scroll on to new business?
Already?
Parking permit report for June 2021 through November 2022. There's no council action required, but the report's in here. You want to go ahead and do this CCMPO?
Well, this was an action item. I think we talked about doing it in a work session sometime in January, maybe revisiting that. So we can hold on action. And that, it is kind of a new business. We talked about maybe not having a work session January 3rd because we're switching officers. So probably plan for the second meeting in January for this.
You could probably even go to February.
Probably,
if you need to.
yeah, if we need to.
Yeah.
Yes.
I make a motion to table the 2023 updates to the CCMPO until either the second meeting in January or the first meeting in February, depending on what else is on the schedule.
Okay, so we have a motion to have a second for table.
Second.
Sedgwick. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of tabling the CCMPO for 2023 for either the second meeting in January or the first meeting in February, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. And then CATA memo is an FYI, that no council action is required. And that information, I don't even see that information in my packet. And then we have resolutions for grant applications. The grants will be submitted in the name of Bellefonte Borough. The borough has all of the required ID numbers, but matching funds will come out of the water and sewer funds. The grant applications are related to HCO grant and small systems grant programs. Do I have a motion and second to approve the two resolutions related to the stated grant applications.
I'll make that
Motion by Bernier, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Or Dan, comments, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the two resolutions related to the stated grant applications, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries. And again, we can consider goals. I think that's pretty much been done at our last agenda work session, and we can carry that on. Do I need to sign these or you sign?
I think I signed. Oh, you do sign.
Okay,
It might be in
we'll
red
get
folder.
back to that. So that brings us down to, we do have an executive committee meeting following this meeting. We'll keep it as quick as we can to review the evaluations and tabulations we came up with. And there is a special presentation.
Yes. I'm going to take a picture of where are we going to go.
I'm going to bring the podium, I'm trying to set it back there. This is special because this person doesn't know this is coming. So when I mention your name, please come up here with me. Historic Bellefonte proclamation for Mayor Jean Buddy Johnson. Whereas Jean Buddy Johnson began serving as mayor of the borough of Bellefonte in January 2022, and whereas Mayor Johnson conducted tours of borough properties, including the police department, the John Montgomery Ward ball field at Governor's Park, and the Big Springs cover, finding them in need of renovating. And whereas Mayor Johnson worked with Senator Jake Corman to secure millions of dollars in grant funds for all three projects, and now therefore the Borough of Bellefonte Council does hereby recognize and thank Mayor Johnson for his efforts on his outstanding first year of service to the borough. And this is signed by Mr. Ralph Stewart.
Thank you all very much. It's been a great experience, and like I said, I've since I met Stan Goldman years ago, I've always wanted to be more involved in the community, and my goal is to be mayor of Bellefonte, and onward and upward, and let's keep working together and make this a great place to visit, to live, and thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And now I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Dan, second?
Second.
Kent? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone.
Christmas.
Yes, I need-
And you'll be following